The room was tense. Every breath seemed to linger in the air as the judge rapped his gavel, signaling the start of what would be the most crucial trial in recent memory. Elon Musk, billionaire CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, sat stone-faced at the defense table. His sharp eyes darted around the courtroom, never resting on one single thing for too long. He had mastered the art of control, whether it was in front of a rocket launch or in this moment, now in the crosshairs of a legal battle that threatened to destroy everything he had built. The media had gone wild when the news broke. Elon Musk, fraud, deception, and corporate chaos, screamed the headlines. Investors were nervous. The public was divided. Was this the end of the man who had single-handedly redefined space exploration and electric vehicles? Could the genius who once dreamed of colonizing Mars now be torn apart by the very system that had allowed him to thrive? The court was filled to capacity, media, spectators, and even a few Tesla stockholders. Musk's reputation was on the line. But what really took the wind out of his sails was the weight of the charges. Fraud. Endangerment of employees. Financial misconduct. And, worst of all, accusations that he had misled investors, potentially costing them billions of dollars. It was a scandal of massive proportions. But even in the face of the public's scrutiny, Musk remained composed. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as his defense team prepared their arguments, and the prosecutor, the one seeking to break him, stood confidently at the other side of the room. This trial, the prosecutor began, is not just about one man's failure, but about the millions who were affected by his lies. Tesla's shareholders, employees, and every American who believed in the future of clean energy and space travel have been led astray. The word stung, but Musk didn't flinch. He couldn't afford to. Not now. Mr. Musk, the prosecutor continued, we have overwhelming evidence that you deliberately misled the public. In fact, you used your position as a powerful businessman to manipulate the stock market and make decisions that endangered your employees. You've shown a blatant disregard for ethics, and it's time the truth came out. Musk's legal team whispered among themselves, strategizing, but Musk sat still, his eyes focused, calculating. This was the moment he had prepared for, the moment when everything could either fall apart or come together. At the defense table, his lead attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Claire Stanton, stood up to address the court. She was poised and exuded confidence as she began speaking, her voice calm yet commanding. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we are here today because of misinformation and misunderstanding. Mr. Musk is a visionary, not a criminal. The accusations against him are based on misinterpretations of his words and actions. What you will hear today is a man who took risks, yes, but who took them with the intention of changing the world, not for personal gain. As she spoke, Musk could feel the weight of the situation pressing on him. He wasn't just defending his companies or his reputation, he was defending everything he believed in. His mind wandered for a brief moment, back to the early days of Tesla, SpaceX, and his rise to prominence. Elon Musk hadn't always been the billionaire mogul everyone knew. He had started with nothing but a dream that seemed impossible to most people. Born in Pretoria, South Africa, in 1971, Musk had always been a curious child, constantly questioning the world around him. His parents were supportive, but young Elon was often a loner, spending his days buried in books about science fiction, physics, and technology. He was a self-taught prodigy, spending hours on end reading and learning about the possibilities of the future. His first venture into the world of business came when he co-founded Zip2, a software company, which he sold for nearly $300 million. But that success was only the beginning. Musk's true passion lay in technology that could change the world for the better. In 2002, after selling Zip2, he founded X.com, which later became PayPal. PayPal was a groundbreaking success, eventually being sold to eBay for $1.5 billion. But Musk wasn't content to rest on his laurels. He wanted to make history, he wanted to change the course of humanity. He then turned his focus to space and electric cars. He founded SpaceX with the goal of reducing space transportation costs and eventually colonizing Mars. At the same time, he took the helm of Tesla, aiming to revolutionize the electric car industry and create sustainable energy solutions. These ventures were met with skepticism. Many believed they were impossible. But Musk, with his relentless determination, had always defied expectations. But now, all of that success was at risk. Musk had put everything on the line, and it seemed like the world was starting to turn against him. The prosecution wasn't just going after his companies, they were going after his very character. They painted Musk as a man driven by greed, willing to risk the lives of his employees and the livelihoods of his investors for personal gain. His defense team worked tirelessly, but it was becoming clear that they were losing ground. The evidence presented by the prosecution appeared solid. Emails, testimonies from former employees, and financial records seemed to confirm the worst. Musk's legal team tried to refute it all, but the weight of the accusations was overwhelming. As the trial dragged on, the pressure mounted. Musk had always been a master of managing pressure, whether it was building rockets that didn't explode or launching electric vehicles into space, but this was different. This wasn't just about the future of his companies, it was about his personal freedom and reputation. But even as the courtroom seemed to be closing in on him, Musk held on to one thing: his ability to think differently. He had always seen the world from a unique perspective, a genius in his field, capable of seeing connections that others couldn't. And in this moment, he knew he would need to tap into that same ingenuity to win this fight. Then, just as the case seemed to reach its darkest point, something unexpected happened. A former Tesla employee named John Miller stepped forward, offering to testify on Musk's behalf. John was a senior engineer who had worked with Tesla for years before leaving under difficult circumstances. His testimony wasn't going to be easy to explain, but he had information that could turn the case upside down. "I worked closely with Mr. Musk," John told the court, "and while things weren't always easy at Tesla, he was never the villain that people make him out to be. He didn't cut corners, and when there were issues, he addressed them head-on. The accusations being made against him? They're based on misunderstandings and false assumptions." This moment provided the first glimmer of hope for Musk. It wasn't enough yet to win, but it was the start of something that could change the course of the trial. Musk's legal team wasn't ready to give up. With John's help, they began to uncover new angles that could discredit the prosecution's evidence. It wasn't a clear victory, but it was a shift in momentum, a sign that the tide could turn. As the judge called for a brief recess, Musk stood up, his mind racing with possibilities. He had no intention of losing this fight. He had faced impossible odds before, and he had always found a way to win. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon Musk had always been different. From a young age, his curiosity about the world seemed boundless, his intellect sharp, and his ambitions towering. Born in Pretoria, South Africa, on June 28, 1971, he grew up in a family that could hardly be described as extraordinary, but it was here that his journey began, one that would ultimately alter the future of humanity. His father, Elon Musk, was a successful electromechanical engineer, and his mother, May Musk, was a dietitian and a model, but their influence on Elon was complex. While his mother supported his dreams, his relationship with his father was strained. Errol's high expectations and distant demeanor left Elon feeling misunderstood, and this tension fueled his desire to break free from their shadows and carve out his own legacy. Early on, Elon was fascinated by technology and the potential it had to shape the future. At the age of 10, he bought his first computer, a Commodore VIC-20. It wasn't much by today's standards, but to Elon, it was a key to unlocking his understanding of the digital world. He taught himself programming and, at age 12, created a simple video game called Blaster, which he sold for $500 to a computer magazine. For many children, this might have been a casual hobby, but for Musk, it was the first of many steps that would lead him to a world of unimaginable innovation. However, it wasn't all smooth sailing. School was a challenge for Elon. He was often bullied, the target of cruel jokes from classmates who couldn't relate to his interests. His introverted nature set him apart, and while he may have felt isolated, he didn't let that deter him. Instead, it fueled his determination to succeed on his own terms. His relentless drive to prove himself only strengthened as he grew older. After moving to Canada at the age of 17 to attend Queen's University, Elon sought to distance himself from the expectations placed on him. He eventually transferred to the University of Pennsylvania, where he earned degrees in both economics and physics. It was at Penn that Elon's passion for changing the world became clearer. He wanted to do more than just build wealth, he wanted to build something that would leave a lasting impact on society. He could see the future, a world where clean energy was accessible to all, where humanity had colonized other planets, and where technology served not just to entertain but to empower. The conventional path, one of climbing the corporate ladder or settling for a steady job, wasn't for him. Instead, he would break the mold and blaze his own trail. After graduating, Elon could have easily joined a well-paying job in Silicon Valley. Instead, he decided to take a risk. In 1995, with a small loan from his father, he co-founded Zip2, a city guide software company that provided maps and business directories to newspapers. It was his first taste of success. But even that was just the beginning. Compaq, a major computer company, acquired Zip2 for nearly $300 million in 1999. Elon Musk had made his first fortune, but he wasn't content to rest on his laurels. The world of technology was changing rapidly, and Musk knew there were still bigger mountains to climb. In 1999, Musk founded X.com, an online payment company. It was a bold venture at a time when the internet was still young, and e-commerce was just beginning to take off. But Musk wasn't just thinking about online payments, he had grander ideas for reshaping the entire financial system. His ambition and willingness to think outside the box paid off when X.com merged with Confinity, which had developed a product called PayPal. While Elon's vision for X.com was vast, his management style was seen as unconventional and, at times, abrasive. In 2000, after a series of internal conflicts, he was ousted from the company he founded. PayPal, as it was now known, would go on to be sold to eBay for $1.5 billion. Musk received a sizable portion of that, but the experience of being pushed out of his own company stung. It was a lesson in the harsh realities of the business world, a world where even the brightest minds could be left behind by their own creations. But Musk's entrepreneurial spirit was undeterred. His vision was bigger than one company, bigger than one failure. He wasn't content to play in the world of online payments or digital transactions. He wanted to revolutionize industries that seemed, to many, to be untouchable. After PayPal, Musk took a leap into the realms of space exploration and electric vehicles, industries that many thought were far too challenging for someone with limited expertise. In 2002, Musk founded SpaceX with the goal of reducing the cost of space travel and eventually making life multiplanetary. At the time, it seemed like a fantasy. NASA and the government had a monopoly on space, and private companies had little chance of breaking in. But Musk was determined to prove everyone wrong. The road to success wasn't easy. SpaceX's early attempts to launch rockets ended in failure. The company was on the brink of collapse, and Musk had poured all his remaining money into the venture. But he never gave up. In 2008, after 3 failed launches, SpaceX succeeded with the Falcon 1, making it the first privately developed liquid-fueled rocket to reach orbit. It was a historic moment, one that marked the beginning of a new era in space exploration. At the same time, Musk was tackling the future of transportation with Tesla Motors. Despite the skepticism from critics, Musk pushed forward with his vision of electric cars that were not only environmentally friendly but also high-performance vehicles that would change the automotive industry. The Roadster, Tesla's first electric car, was a game-changer, proving that electric cars could be stylish, fast, and practical. Despite early financial struggles and constant doubts, Musk's perseverance began to pay off. Tesla's Model S won numerous awards, and SpaceX became a key player in commercial space travel, even partnering with NASA to send astronauts to the International Space Station. By 2025, Elon Musk was no longer just an entrepreneur, he was a cultural icon. His companies had transformed the way people thought about transportation and space. But while the world admired his genius, the truth was more complicated. Musk's bold ambitions came at a cost. He was driven by a relentless desire to change the world, but in doing so, he often made enemies. The trial was the culmination of years of intense scrutiny. Critics had long accused him of being reckless, unpredictable, and at times, irresponsible in his leadership. His management style was unconventional, and his willingness to take huge risks often meant that people around him suffered, whether employees or shareholders. The case now brought these criticisms to the forefront, threatening to unravel everything he had built. But there was something about Elon Musk, something that set him apart from everyone else. His genius wasn't just in his ideas, it was in his ability to bounce back from failure. Now, as the trial began to take its toll, Musk knew he had to draw on every lesson from his past, every ounce of his resilience. The court battle might be his toughest challenge yet, but he had faced far worse. The courtroom buzzed with an intensity that could be felt in the air. With each passing day, the pressure on Elon Musk mounted. The trial was no longer just about defending himself from accusations, it was a battleground for his legacy, a clash of ideals, ambitions, and a battle to maintain control over the empire he had built. And as the days stretched on, the stakes only grew higher. Musk's defense team had been working tirelessly, but it was becoming clearer with each witness testimony that the case against him was gaining traction. The prosecution had expertly presented their case, painting a picture of Musk as a reckless billionaire who cared more about pushing boundaries than about the consequences of his actions. Investors, employees, and even former colleagues lined up to testify against him, some with resentment, others with fear in their voices, all eager to tear down the icon who had once seemed untouchable. The media didn't help. Cameras flashed relentlessly, capturing every movement in the courtroom. The headlines grew darker with each day, amplifying the pressure that Musk felt building around him. "Is this the end of the road for Elon Musk?" the articles read. "Tesla's downfall begins in court." These were just the beginning of the media's relentless onslaught. The courtroom was packed as the prosecution's lead attorney, Gregory Thompson, presented what seemed like a mountain of evidence against Musk. Thompson was ruthless. He had researched every facet of Musk's life, from his earliest ventures to the present, and he was determined to expose every perceived flaw, every moment of misstep. Musk, by his own admission, made bold claims about Tesla's future, Thompson stated confidently, holding up a stack of documents. But he failed to meet those expectations. And his mismanagement resulted in the harm of thousands. Investors lost their money. Employees suffered in unsafe conditions. And Mr. Musk, he refused to take responsibility. Instead, he lied to cover up his failures. Thompson played video clips of Musk's public statements, where he had promised quick success and rapid growth, pushing the bounds of what seemed realistic. He juxtaposed these with testimony from former Tesla employees who described a workplace under constant pressure, where safety protocols were overlooked, and where employees were expected to work long hours without the proper resources. The pressure of the trial was mounting, but Musk sat still, his face impassive. He knew that the media could easily twist these claims, using moments of overconfidence or minor missteps against him. However, the trial wasn't just about the media frenzy, it was about the perception of his character, the idea that Musk was as reckless and self-serving as the prosecution made him out to be. Elon Musk had never been one to back down from a challenge. But even the most resilient minds can be tested to their breaking point. Musk had always been accustomed to pushing past limitations, but this time, the challenge was different. For the first time, he found himself in the midst of a legal war with his entire future on the line. The accusations weren't just about financial mismanagement. They dug deeper into his personal life, his decision-making process, and the sacrifices he had made. Musk wasn't just fighting for his companies anymore, he was fighting to protect the very essence of who he was. One afternoon during the trial, Musk was cross-examined in front of the jury. The prosecutor went after him relentlessly, trying to crack the facade he had spent years building. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as Gregory Thompson asked question after question, pushing Musk into a corner. "You claimed that you were committed to the success of Tesla," Thompson began, his voice sharp. "Yet, you continued to make bold promises while knowing that the company was bleeding money. You took risks, yes, but at whose expense?" Musk's mind raced. He could feel the weight of the question pressing down on him, and for the first time in the trial, he felt vulnerable. He had always been a risk-taker, and he knew that every step he took had consequences. But he also knew that every decision had been made with the goal of creating a better future. "I did what I believed was necessary to change the world," Musk responded, his voice firm despite the pressure. "Tesla was never just about profit for me. It was about proving that electric vehicles could be mainstream, that we could reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. And I wasn't going to give up on that vision just because the path was difficult. But I never intended to harm anyone." Thompson didn't relent. "But harm was done, Mr. Musk. You ignored warning signs and continued to push forward when it was clear that the company couldn't handle the pressure. Your investors were misled, your employees were overworked, and the public was deceived." Musk's hand clenched into a fist under the table. He had always believed in his companies, and he wasn't about to let anyone strip away that belief now. Yet the words from Thompson cut deep. The accusations made him question whether his ambition had sometimes clouded his judgment. Had he pushed too hard? Had he failed to see the cost of his actions? The courtroom fell silent as Musk stared across at Thompson. He wasn't sure whether to feel anger or self-doubt, but he knew one thing for certain: the fight was far from over. Amid the growing tension, Claire Stanton, Musk's lead attorney, remained focused. She could see the toll the trial was taking on Musk, and she knew they couldn't afford to let their guard down. "Your Honor, I request a moment to cross-examine the witness," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. The judge nodded, and the room fell quiet again. Stanton stood up and faced the jury. "Mr. Thompson has made a strong case, but it is based on speculation and hearsay," she said, her tone calm and measured. "What we have here is a misunderstanding of Elon Musk's vision. Yes, he took risks, but those risks came from a place of wanting to change the world, not to deceive. Let me remind you that Tesla was built on the promise of innovation, and SpaceX has made history by launching the first privately funded rockets into space. These are not actions of someone who is reckless, they are the actions of someone who sees the future and is willing to fight for it." Stanton's words seemed to resonate in the courtroom. Musk's face remained stoic, but a glimmer of hope flickered in his eyes. The battle was far from won, but perhaps there was still a way to turn the tide. As the trial dragged into its third week, Musk knew one thing for certain: this was only the beginning. He had fought too hard to let it all slip away. He had faced adversity before, and now, once again, he would have to rise above. With Stanton's words in the jury's ears and the public slowly beginning to question the narrative that had been built against him, Musk's legal team devised a new strategy. It wasn't just about defending Musk from the charges, it was about changing the public's perception of him entirely. But this wouldn't be easy. The legal battle was far from over, and there was still a long way to go before Musk could prove his innocence and reclaim his legacy. The rising conflict in the courtroom was only getting started, and Elon Musk knew that the fight ahead would be the hardest of his life. As the trial progressed, the weight of the battle pressed harder on Elon Musk. The tension in the courtroom was palpable, everyone, from the attorneys to the spectators, could feel it. The stakes had escalated. It was no longer just about defending against accusations, it was about a battle for his legacy, his companies, and everything he had worked for. With every day that passed, the trial seemed more like a spectacle than a pursuit of truth. Musk, always a man of action, knew he needed to do something bold to turn the tide. His legal team had been fighting hard, but the narrative that had been built against him was too strong. It was time to change the game, to make a move that would catch both the court and the public by surprise. It wasn't just about winning this case anymore, it was about reclaiming control of his story. It was late one evening when Elon Musk had his breakthrough. He sat alone in his office, reflecting on the events of the past few weeks. His mind raced through ideas, through strategies, through every challenge he had ever faced. He had always been able to think his way out of impossible situations. Why should this be any different? And then it clicked. What if he could use the very thing that had been used against him, the accusations of being reckless and self-serving, to his advantage? What if he could show that, while he might have taken risks, he had always done so with a vision for the future? He realized that he had to do something unexpected. He needed to flip the narrative entirely. He would take the stand. And not just to defend himself in the traditional way, but to expose the truth of what drove him, the bigger picture of what he was trying to achieve, even if it meant confronting the mess he had made along the way. It was an unconventional move, one that few CEOs would ever attempt, but Musk wasn't like most CEOs. He was a visionary, and he was about to show the world exactly why. When the day came for Musk to take the stand, the courtroom was packed. Cameras were flashing, and the energy was electric. His presence alone was enough to grab attention. His reputation, both controversial and celebrated, had already made him the center of the media's gaze. Elon sat confidently as the questioning began, but this time, there was something different in his demeanor. Instead of fidgeting or reacting with irritation like he had done in the past, Musk appeared calm, almost calculated, as if he was in control of every moment. Gregory Thompson, the lead prosecutor, rose to begin his questioning, but Musk was ready. "Mr. Musk, you've testified that you were unaware of the challenges Tesla faced, yet you continue to make bold claims about the company's success," Thompson began, trying to push Musk into a corner. "How do you justify this?" Musk took a deep breath, his mind steady and focused. "I didn't claim that everything was perfect," he replied, his voice firm. "What I claimed was that we were on a path to something much bigger. That we were working towards changing the world, creating sustainable energy, and proving that electric vehicles could be as powerful and desirable as gasoline cars. I was always honest about the struggles. But I was also honest about the fact that we were working towards a greater goal. And sometimes, in order to reach that goal, you have to take risks." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle in the room. The jury was listening closely now. "Yes, we had setbacks," Musk continued, his voice gaining momentum. "But every failure, every challenge, every mistake, these were lessons. And we learned. We pushed forward, and we became stronger because of it. And now, Tesla is the leader in electric vehicles. SpaceX is the first private company to send astronauts into space. But it wasn't easy. Nothing that's worth doing ever is." The courtroom was quiet, the audience hanging on his every word. Musk had turned the conversation away from his supposed recklessness and reframed it as part of a bigger, more purposeful vision. It was a move that no one had expected, and it was clear that the prosecution hadn't prepared for it. But Thompson was relentless. "You've mentioned setbacks and challenges, Mr. Musk," he pressed, "but what about the people who were hurt in the process? The employees who worked under intense pressure and the investors who lost millions? Shouldn't that be your responsibility?" Musk's gaze didn't falter. He knew Thompson was trying to exploit the emotional angle of the case, the human cost of his decisions. But Musk wasn't going to back down. "I've always believed that innovation requires sacrifice. But I also believe in responsibility. We've worked hard to create a culture of safety at Tesla, and we've invested in our employees' futures. We've built jobs, technology, and solutions that didn't exist before. Of course, mistakes were made, and we are addressing them. But the truth is, we were building something that no one had ever done before. And sometimes, you have to break the mold in order to create something new. Musk's words hung in the air, and for the first time in weeks, the courtroom seemed to shift. The jury, the media, and even the public began to look at him not as a reckless billionaire, but as a driven visionary who had made mistakes but was ultimately working towards something far greater than anyone could have imagined. The prosecution's strategy was no longer having the same effect. Musk's words had injected a new narrative into the case, one of ambition, vision, and the realities of achieving the impossible. His transparency about the difficulties he had faced was striking, and it left many questioning the fairness of the criticism he had received. Claire Stanton, Musk's lead attorney, was watching with a sense of satisfaction. This was the moment they had been waiting for. Musk had finally taken control of the narrative, and the courtroom was reacting to it. The tides were shifting, and the case was no longer a simple battle of accusations. It was now a contest between Musk's vision for the future and the traditional expectations of the corporate world. As the day came to a close, Musk returned to his seat, his expression unreadable. He had just made a bold move, and he knew that it could either be his salvation or his downfall. But there was something in the air now, a sense of hope that hadn't been there before. The trial was far from over, but for the first time since it began, Musk felt a flicker of optimism. He had faced down the media, the critics, and even his own doubts. Now, he was ready for whatever came next. The next few days were crucial. The prosecution would not go down without a fight, and they would likely try to undercut Musk's bold stand. But his tactic had shifted the public narrative. His message had reached the jury, and the pressure was now on the other side to disprove his vision and the authenticity of his ambition. As Musk prepared for the next round of testimony, he knew the trial wasn't just about defending his actions anymore. It was about showing the world that his vision was worth the risk, and that, in the end, it would change everything. The climactic journey had just begun, but for the first time, Musk felt like he was on the right path. The courtroom was unusually silent as the next day of the trial began. The tension that had hung over the previous weeks seemed to have intensified overnight. The public, the media, and the jury were all now keenly focused on one thing: would Elon Musk's calculated risk in taking the stand continue to pay off, or would the weight of the prosecution's case come crashing down on him? Musk sat in the defense chair, calm but alert. His legal team, led by Claire Stanton, had been on high alert, carefully preparing for every possible move. They knew the prosecution would retaliate hard after the shift in momentum Musk had caused. But this wasn't just about the trial anymore. It was personal. Musk was fighting not just for his companies but for his own identity. He was a visionary, a man who had always pushed the boundaries of what was possible. But in this courtroom, there was no room for grand gestures. There was only the cold, hard truth of the law. And in that truth, there was something more than just facts. There was an emotional weight that hung in the air. Just as Musk thought the day would proceed like any other, a sudden twist changed the course of the trial. It began with an unexpected motion by the prosecution. The judge called for a short recess, and everyone in the room shifted uneasily in their seats. Musk glanced at Claire, who looked equally surprised. What was happening? After a brief moment, the judge returned to the bench, a grave expression on his face. "We have just received new evidence," the judge announced. The room seemed to hold its breath. "Mr. Thompson, would you care to explain?" Gregory Thompson rose to his feet, a triumphant look in his eyes. "Yes, Your Honor. The evidence we have just received proves something far more significant than we originally thought. It appears that, in the midst of all of Mr. Musk's public bravado and vision for the future, he knew, all along, that Tesla was in deeper financial trouble than he ever admitted. This evidence shows that Mr. Musk, despite what he told his investors, misled them about the company's prospects. He knew about the issues with the production of the Model 3 long before anyone else did, and he didn't disclose it." A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Musk's face remained impassive, but inside, he could feel a storm of emotions brewing. This was the very thing he had hoped would never come to light, an admission that, despite his bold vision, he had hidden the truth from those who trusted him. The new evidence, however, was not simply about financial oversight. It was much worse. The documents that Thompson had presented contained internal communications, emails from Musk himself. They revealed that, at the height of Tesla's production struggles, Musk had instructed his team to downplay the severity of the situation. He had directed them to assure investors that the company was on track, even though production delays and cost overruns were wreaking havoc behind the scenes. The revelation felt like a bombshell. Musk had built his career on innovation, on the promise that he was transforming the world for the better. But now, in the eyes of the jury and the public, it appeared that his actions might have been motivated by self-interest rather than the noble vision he had so often espoused. For a moment, Musk's world seemed to crumble around him. His mind flashed back to those sleepless nights at Tesla and SpaceX, the countless hours spent trying to make his dreams a reality. He had been so consumed with pushing forward, so determined to prove the doubters wrong, that he had overlooked the impact his decisions might have on the people who were counting on him. The realization was overwhelming. But it wasn't just Musk who felt the weight of this moment. The jury looked visibly shaken. Claire Stanton's face had gone pale, and she quickly exchanged a glance with Musk, who was now staring at the evidence on the table. He knew that this moment would define everything. Was this the end of his empire? Was he truly the reckless visionary that the prosecution had painted him to be? The prosecution saw this as their breakthrough. They quickly moved to strengthen their argument, adding this new evidence to their growing case against Musk. The atmosphere in the courtroom had shifted. What had once been a battle of wills between two sides was now a race against time, time for Musk to regain control, to change the narrative before it was too late. As the courtroom recessed for the day, Musk retreated to his chambers. Alone, he let the weight of the evidence settle over him. His thoughts were a blur, but one thing was clear: he had to act quickly. He could not let this scandal define him. He had made mistakes, but he had also done things no one else had dared to dream of. Was he a flawed man? Yes. But was he a visionary, someone who was truly changing the world? The answer was clear to him. His mind wandered back to a conversation he'd had with a close friend years ago, one who had told him, "You can't change the world if you're afraid to fail." Musk had never been afraid to fail, but now, the question wasn't just about whether he was willing to take risks. It was about whether he had betrayed the trust of those who had believed in him. Could he ever make it right? As the night stretched on, Musk found himself on the balcony of his private suite, looking out over the city. The skyline was beautiful, a testament to human ingenuity and ambition. But in this moment, he felt small. His hands shook as he lit a cigarette, the smoke rising into the cool air. He had never felt more vulnerable. But that vulnerability ignited something in him. He realized that this was the moment where his true character would emerge. He could crumble under the weight of this accusation, or he could rise above it, showing the world that even in failure, there was a chance for redemption. The next morning, as the trial resumed, Elon Musk made an unexpected decision. He stood up in the middle of the proceedings, surprising everyone in the room, including his own legal team. "Your Honor, I need to speak," Musk said, his voice steady but raw. The judge looked surprised but nodded for him to proceed. Musk addressed the court with an openness that no one had seen from him before. "I stand before you today, not just as the CEO of Tesla or SpaceX, but as a man who has made mistakes. I did not always make the right decisions. I failed to be transparent when I should have been. But I ask you to look at what we have built, at the risks we've taken to push humanity forward," Musk said, his voice trembling slightly, but unwavering. "I am not perfect, but my vision for the future is one that will, one day, help change the world for the better. I will own up to my mistakes, and I will make things right. I promise you that." Musk's confession wasn't just an attempt to mitigate the damage. It was an emotional plea for understanding, a reflection of his belief in the greater good behind his work. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was raw and real, a moment of truth in the midst of a legal battle. The jury was silent as Musk's words echoed through the courtroom. This wasn't just a defense. This was a man confronting his own flaws in front of the world. It was a shocking revelation, but in that moment, Elon Musk's fate seemed less like a battle to be won and more like a journey he had yet to finish. The day after Elon Musk's shocking declaration in the courtroom, the atmosphere was thick with uncertainty. His unexpected outburst had left the courtroom, the jury, and even his own legal team in a state of shock. It was a gamble, a raw, emotional plea to the jury and to the public. Musk had taken ownership of his failures in a way no one expected. But would it be enough to turn the tide in his favor? His legal team had been working tirelessly behind the scenes, strategizing their next steps. Claire Stanton, Musk's lead attorney, had stayed up late the night before, poring over the new evidence and trying to understand how Musk's confession could be used to his advantage. She knew the prosecution would try to use Musk's emotional plea against him, but she also saw an opportunity, a chance to reframe the case, to make the jury see Musk not as a reckless businessman, but as a man who had made mistakes and was now trying to make amends. The following morning, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation as the prosecution prepared to deliver their final arguments. Gregory Thompson, the lead prosecutor, wasted no time in reminding everyone of Musk's admitted failings. Mr. Musk himself has acknowledged that he misled his investors and the public, Thompson said, his voice sharp and confident. He failed to disclose the true state of Tesla's production issues, despite knowing how dire the situation was. He gambled with the livelihoods of his employees and the financial futures of his investors. And now, he stands before you, trying to convince you that his vision for the future makes up for the damage he has caused. But the truth is, he knew the risks he was taking, and he chose to ignore them for the sake of his own ambitions. The prosecution's argument was powerful. They framed Musk's emotional appeal as nothing more than an attempt to manipulate the jury, to play on their sympathies rather than address the real consequences of his actions. Thompson pressed on, painting Musk as a man who had been too consumed by his own ego to care about the people who had placed their trust in him. But Musk's team wasn't about to let the prosecution's narrative go unchallenged. When it was time for Musk's defense team to present their closing argument, Claire Stanton took a deep breath. The pressure of the past few weeks had been crushing, but now, in this moment, she knew that everything hinged on how she framed Musk's actions. She stood up slowly, walking toward the jury with a calm, deliberate presence. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, her voice steady but filled with conviction, "you've heard a lot about Mr. Musk's mistakes. Yes, he has made errors. Yes, he has taken risks, some that didn't pay off as he hoped. But let's be clear about one thing, Elon Musk didn't take those risks for himself. He didn't take them to enrich himself or to build a personal empire. He took them because he believed in something bigger than himself. He believed in changing the world, making it a better place for future generations." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. The jury was listening intently. Mr. Musk has never denied his failures. He has never tried to hide the mistakes he's made. But he has also never wavered in his commitment to pushing humanity forward. Tesla, SpaceX, Solar City, these companies are the result of a man who dared to dream big. And yes, sometimes those dreams come with setbacks. But they also come with incredible achievements that have changed the world in ways that we can't even fully comprehend yet. Stanton's voice grew stronger as she continued. Mr. Musk has taken accountability. He has apologized for the mistakes he made, and he is doing everything in his power to fix them. But let us not forget the bigger picture here, the innovation, the jobs, the lives that have been changed because of his vision. He has risked everything, his money, his reputation, his freedom, to make the world a better place. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the man standing before you today. The defense rested its case, and the courtroom was filled with an expectant silence. The jury was left to deliberate, and the weight of the decision they had to make was enormous. Elon Musk sat at the defense table, his mind racing. He had given everything in that courtroom. He had admitted his mistakes, shown the emotional toll of the trial, and shared his vision for the future with the world. Now, it was out of his hands. All he could do was wait. The hours seemed to stretch on endlessly. Musk's team stayed close, offering what little comfort they could. Claire Stanton, though exhausted, kept her eyes on Musk, sensing that he had finally done what he needed to do. He had shown the jury who he truly was, a man who had made mistakes, yes, but also a man with an unshakable belief in the potential of humanity. After what felt like an eternity, the jury returned to the courtroom. The room fell silent as the foreman stood and addressed the judge. "Your Honor," the foreman said, "we have reached a verdict." Elon's heart pounded in his chest. The tension was unbearable. The judge nodded. "Please read the verdict." The foreman cleared his throat and looked at Musk, then at the jury. "In the case of the prosecution versus Elon Musk, we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty of all charges." A stunned silence fell over the courtroom. Then, as the words sank in, the room erupted into a mixture of gasps, whispers, and relieved sighs. Musk felt the weight of the past weeks lift off his shoulders. It wasn't just a victory in court, it was a redemption of his character, his vision, and his future. Claire Stanton's face broke into a smile as she turned to Musk. He stood there, unable to fully process the reality of what had just happened. He had done it. He had faced down the storm, and he had come out victorious. As the courtroom cleared, Musk stood alone for a moment, staring out at the empty seats. He knew this trial wasn't just a legal battle, it was a turning point in his life. The world now knew him not as the reckless billionaire, but as the man who had taken responsibility for his actions, learned from his mistakes, and, most importantly, had the courage to keep pushing forward. He had been through hell, but now, the future was wide open. For the first time in weeks, Musk felt a sense of peace. He had paid the price for his mistakes, and now, he was ready to move on. He had learned the hard way that even visionaries had to be accountable. But that lesson had only made him stronger. His journey wasn't over. It had just begun. And as he walked out of the courtroom, the bright future he had once dreamed of now seemed closer than ever. The courtroom doors had barely closed behind Elon Musk when the flood of media outside became overwhelming. Cameras flashed as reporters shouted his name, trying to get a soundbite from the man who had just been acquitted. The air was thick with anticipation, a mix of admiration, skepticism, and curiosity. The questions were all the same: what now, Elon? What's next for you? Musk didn't have time to process the gravity of the victory. The world was already moving on to the next story, the next headline. Claire Stanton walked by his side, her posture straight, exuding the professionalism of a seasoned attorney who had just managed to pull off an incredible win. She turned to Musk, her voice calm but firm. "You did well today. We both know this isn't just a win for you in the courtroom. It's a second chance. Now, we need to figure out how you want to move forward." Musk nodded, but his mind wasn't entirely on the present moment. He had survived the battle, yes. But the war, the real battle for his legacy, his companies, and his future, had only just begun. As soon as Musk stepped out of the courtroom and into the street, he was bombarded by a sea of microphones and flashing cameras. Every reporter had a question, a theory, a headline they wanted from him. They wanted to hear from the man who had survived the unthinkable. Some asked about the trial, some about his personal life, others about his companies. "Mr. Musk, what does this victory mean for Tesla and SpaceX? How will this impact your future projects?" one reporter shouted, pushing a microphone toward him. Musk hesitated for a brief moment before answering, his voice steady but reflective. "This trial is over, but the real work starts now. It's time to get back to focusing on the bigger picture, what we can achieve for humanity. Tesla and SpaceX have always been about pushing boundaries, and that hasn't changed. As he spoke, his mind raced. Musk had just won in court, but now he was facing the reality of the world's scrutiny. What did the public really think of him now? Could he truly rebuild his reputation, or was he forever tainted by the scandal? While some reporters were sympathetic, there were others who weren't so easily swayed by Musk's emotional confession. They questioned his sincerity, asking whether his admission of guilt was just another tactical move to save his skin. They wanted to know if he was truly remorseful or if he was just another billionaire who had managed to escape justice. Musk knew that the public's opinion of him was forever changed. But one thing was clear, he had been given a chance to prove himself again. This trial, which had at first seemed like the end of his career, might just be the turning point he needed. In the days that followed the trial, Musk's legal team began to work on damage control. Public relations firms were hired, and interviews were arranged with various media outlets. Musk would appear on television, in front of cameras, and on podcasts to continue explaining his side of the story, to offer the world a clearer picture of his vision. But it wasn't just about managing his image, it was about showing that he had learned and grown from the experience. His legal battles were behind him, but now, he had to prove that the future he had been working toward, the future of electric cars, space exploration, and sustainable energy, was still possible, still worth fighting for. Musk took to social media, addressing his followers directly, speaking in a tone of vulnerability and resolve. To my supporters and even to those who have doubted me, I want to say this: I've made mistakes. I've learned from them, and I will continue to learn. But I am committed to the work we're doing. We're not just building companies, we're building a future. I'm still here, and we're still going to change the world. The response was overwhelming. Fans, investors, and critics alike flooded his social media channels with comments of support and criticism. For every person who declared him a fraud, there were dozens who reaffirmed their belief in his ability to innovate, to overcome adversity, and to push the limits of what was possible. In the solitude of his office at SpaceX, Musk sat at his desk, his fingers lightly tracing the edge of the documents in front of him. The weight of the trial, the media frenzy, and the emotional toll of the past weeks had left him feeling drained. But now, in the quiet of his space, he could reflect on the road ahead. The battle in court had forced him to confront parts of himself that he had long buried, his mistakes, his insecurities, and the vulnerabilities that even someone like him could not escape. It was a humbling experience, one that made him question his own motivations and actions. Had he pushed too hard? Had he been blinded by his ambition? As he stared out the window at the vast expanse of SpaceX's facilities, his thoughts drifted to the people who had believed in him, who had stood by him through the highs and the lows. He owed them something more than just another project or a new company. He owed them transparency, honesty, and a commitment to doing things the right way, even when it was hard. Musk made a decision then, a decision to not just rebuild his career, but to rebuild his character. The public had seen his failures, but they hadn't yet seen his redemption. It was time to show them. Elon Musk understood now more than ever that the path forward was going to be harder than anything he had ever faced. The world might have forgiven him, but the real test was whether he could redeem himself in the eyes of those who had trusted him the most. He called a meeting with his executive teams at Tesla and SpaceX. It was time to reassess priorities. Time to ensure that everything, from production goals to internal communications, was aligned with the values he now held more dearly than ever. "We've made incredible progress, but it's time to refocus," Musk said in the meeting, his voice steady and strong. "The dream we're chasing, the impact we want to have, it's bigger than any mistake we've made. We need to be better, and we need to make sure we're doing things the right way. No more shortcuts, no more compromises." He was met with nods of agreement from his team. Musk knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long while, he felt ready to walk it. He had been given a second chance, and he wasn't going to waste it. As the meeting ended, Musk stood up and looked around at the people in the room, the ones who had stuck with him through thick and thin. They weren't just employees or colleagues, they were a part of the bigger mission he had set out to accomplish all those years ago. "Let's change the world," Musk said, a renewed sense of purpose in his voice. The future was uncertain, but one thing was for sure, Elon Musk wasn't going down without a fight. He had faced the harshest trial of his life, and now, he was ready for whatever came next. The path to redemption was long, but it was a journey he would take, step by step, with the belief that the best was yet to come. Weeks passed since Elon Musk's court victory, and while the dust had begun to settle, the aftermath was far from over. The press coverage continued, but now, it wasn't just about the trial, it was about what came next. Musk had proven that he could survive the storm, but could he rebuild his legacy in the eyes of the world? The world had been watching him fail, but now it would watch him rise. Musk sat in his office, looking over the latest quarterly report from Tesla. The numbers were good, but they weren't groundbreaking. The company had survived the turbulence of the trial, but it needed more. It needed the next big thing, the game-changing innovation that would solidify its place at the forefront of the electric vehicle revolution. He had always been a visionary, but now, the stakes felt even higher. He knew that in order to regain the trust of investors, customers, and the public, Tesla had to push the boundaries once more. The world was waiting for something spectacular. Musk turned to his team, who sat around the large conference table. His voice, now calmer than before, echoed through the room. "We've been making progress, but we're not where we need to be. We have to think bigger. I'm not talking about just improving our current products. We need to revolutionize the industry. I'm talking about a new car, a car that's more than just a vehicle. It has to be the future of transportation." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the gravity of his words. This wasn't just another plan. This was Musk laying the groundwork for something that would change the world once again. "We're going to launch a car that's fully autonomous, that's powered entirely by sustainable energy, and that can drive itself to anywhere in the world, no roads necessary. It's time to make the impossible possible." His team exchanged glances. The idea was ambitious, even by Musk's standards. But that was what Musk was known for, taking risks, pushing boundaries, and shattering expectations. It was a risky proposition, but everyone in the room could feel the urgency in his voice. They were all in. While Tesla's future was now firmly set on innovation, Musk also realized that his personal life needed a shift. The trial had drained him emotionally, and although he had regained his public standing, there was something deeper that he had to address. Musk had always been fiercely focused on his work, often at the expense of his personal relationships. The divorce, the scandals, and the public scrutiny had all taken a toll on him. He knew it was time to take a step back and reflect on his own life. He spent the next few weeks away from the limelight, visiting his properties in different parts of the world, from the bustling streets of Los Angeles to the serene coasts of New Zealand. During this time, he took long walks, read books on philosophy and mindfulness, and tried to reconnect with the core values that had initially driven him to pursue his far-reaching goals. But this wasn't just about self-care, it was about rebuilding a deeper connection with the people who had always supported him. His family, his closest friends, and his children. Elon reached out to his ex-wife, Justine, and after several long, heartfelt conversations, they started to find common ground. It wasn't about rekindling a romance, it was about finding peace and understanding, especially for the sake of their children. Musk's newfound perspective was beginning to influence his outlook on business as well. He had always been known as a bold, sometimes reckless entrepreneur, but he realized that moving forward, he had to think not just about the bottom line, but about the people whose lives were impacted by his decisions, the employees, the families, the communities. SpaceX had always been his passion, and despite the chaos of the past few months, Musk never lost sight of the bigger picture. The goal had always been to make humanity a multiplanetary species. And although SpaceX had achieved incredible milestones, Musk knew that it was time to accelerate the mission. On a chilly morning, Musk sat at a press conference in front of a large SpaceX banner, flanked by engineers and other key players in the company. The press was gathered, eager to hear what Musk had to say about the future of space exploration. "We're going to Mars," Musk announced, his voice steady and firm. "Not just with a few colonists or scientists. We are preparing for the first full-scale mission to establish a permanent human presence on Mars. This is no longer a dream, it's a reality we are working toward every day. And it's going to happen sooner than you think." The room erupted into applause, and the press buzzed with excitement. For a moment, Musk felt the weight of everything he had worked for, the failures, the trials, the setbacks, coming to fruition. This was his moment. He had just redefined SpaceX's mission in the most dramatic way possible. He had reaffirmed the purpose that had driven him from the beginning, to make life multiplanetary. The announcement about the Mars mission sent shockwaves around the world. Fans and investors celebrated the bold move, while critics questioned the feasibility of such an ambitious plan. Musk had always attracted a certain amount of skepticism, but now, the stakes were higher. The world had seen his fall from grace, and now they were watching his rise. Was this just another grand vision that would end in failure, or was Musk truly capable of pulling it off? There were countless think pieces, online debates, and social media reactions. Some were excited about the prospect of a multiplanetary future, while others were more concerned with the reality of Musk's past mistakes. Would his aggressive plans lead to success, or would they once again result in failure? One thing was clear, Elon Musk's journey had come full circle. From the trials and tribulations in the courtroom to the announcement of the Mars mission, he had proven that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, his vision for the future remained unwavering. As the months passed, Musk kept moving forward with his grand plans. Tesla's new vehicle, the fully autonomous, sustainable car, was well into development, and SpaceX's Mars mission was accelerating faster than anyone had anticipated. Yet Musk knew that there was always more to be done. In private moments, he reflected on his earlier trials, the mistakes, and the moments that had made him question everything. But now, with a clearer vision, a redefined focus, and a renewed sense of purpose, he was ready to tackle whatever challenges lay ahead. Musk had spent years dreaming about changing the world, and now, in his moment of rebirth, he had the opportunity to make that dream a reality. He was no longer just the controversial billionaire, he was the man who would lead humanity into a new era of technology, sustainability, and exploration. He had faced his demons, risen above the public judgment, and reclaimed his place in history. The road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but Musk had learned one important lesson: no matter how many times you fall, there's always a way to get back up. And this time, he was determined to not only get back up but to soar higher than ever before. Elon Musk stood on the rooftop of his newest SpaceX facility in Los Angeles, gazing out at the horizon as the sun set, casting a brilliant orange glow across the skyline. For a moment, the weight of the world seemed to melt away. It wasn't just the view that had captured his attention, it was the sheer realization of how far he had come. The courtroom drama, the press, the social media frenzy, it was all behind him. Now, his focus was on something bigger. He had always known that the road to Mars was long, but now, it felt more attainable than ever. SpaceX was making progress, and Tesla's new car, which promised to revolutionize transportation, was moving full speed ahead. His companies were heading toward their next milestones. The excitement of the future was palpable in the air. Yet, as much as Musk tried to stay focused on his goals, doubts lingered in the back of his mind. The whole world had been watching him crumble under pressure, and while he had come out victorious, there were still those who questioned his ability to pull off these grand ventures. It was late in the evening when Musk received the call. He had just finished a long meeting with his top engineers, discussing new ways to optimize SpaceX's rocket technologies when the phone rang. It was Claire Stanton, his lead attorney. She had been a constant ally throughout the trials and had worked tirelessly to make sure he was prepared for every potential outcome. "Elon, we've got a problem." Claire's voice was serious, her tone sharp. Musk's heart rate quickened. He had already weathered so many storms. Was there yet another hurdle ahead? What's going on? There's a new lawsuit brewing. Some of your investors are beginning to have second thoughts after the trial. They're concerned about the long-term viability of your ventures, and the media backlash isn't helping, Claire said, her voice carrying the weight of concern. They're questioning whether you can deliver on your promises. Musk felt a knot tighten in his chest. He had fought too hard to get this far, only to be faced with another potential setback. But he couldn't afford to let the fear of failure hold him back again. I'm not backing down, Claire, Musk said with a determination that even surprised himself. They can doubt me all they want. But the mission, my vision, it's bigger than any of them. Despite Musk's outward confidence, the doubt remained. As he walked through the halls of Tesla, observing the work being done on the new prototype, he couldn't shake the weight of his thoughts. The new car, autonomous, fully sustainable, and capable of driving itself across the globe, was ambitious. It was the next frontier, but what if they failed to meet expectations? What if it was just another bold, visionary idea that never materialized? Musk wasn't used to feeling this way. Over the years, he had been celebrated for his visionary thinking and his willingness to take risks that others considered too dangerous. His success had seemed almost inevitable at times. But now, after the trial, after everything he had been through, doubt was creeping in. He didn't have the luxury of time. His teams were depending on him, and his investors were already beginning to question the direction of his companies. The pressure to deliver, to show the world that his vision was not just an illusion, was overwhelming. Musk knew that he had to rise above the uncertainty, to prove to himself and to the world that he could not only survive the setbacks but ultimately turn them into triumphs. It was at this lowest point that Musk received a message from one of his oldest and most trusted friends, J.B. Straubel, a co-founder of Tesla. The message was short, but it cut straight to the heart. Elon, we've been through the fire together, and we've built something incredible. But this next phase? It's yours. You've always pushed boundaries, now more than ever, you need to believe in yourself. Everyone else does. Musk stared at the message for a long time. It wasn't the first time he'd heard those words. But something about them, coming from someone who had been there since the beginning, hit him harder than usual. He realized then that the one thing he had been overlooking in all of his stress and worry was the fundamental truth: he had built a legacy. A legacy not just of innovation, but of perseverance, of being someone who fought against the odds, who turned dreams into realities. The next morning, Musk convened a meeting with his leadership team. There was no grand speech, no dramatic build-up. He simply walked in, took his place at the head of the table, and addressed his team directly. The investors are nervous. The media is still watching. But let's be honest, we're going to make history. Whether people believe in us or not doesn't matter. It's time to refocus, he said, his voice calm, yet resolute. For the first time since the trial, Musk spoke with a clarity that sent a ripple of energy through the room. His team listened intently, their respect for him palpable. The doubts that had weighed him down were gone, replaced with a renewed sense of purpose. We're not just changing the car industry, and we're not just getting people to Mars. We're changing what's possible. Let's not forget why we're here. I believe in you all, and I believe in our mission. His words were simple, but they reignited the fire in the people around him. Musk wasn't just a CEO, he was the driving force, the beacon of possibility. His company, his vision, had to survive and thrive, not just for him but for the people who had entrusted him with their futures. From that moment forward, Musk dove back into his work with an intensity that he had never felt before. The Mars mission took precedence, and SpaceX pushed the envelope with new rocket technology that promised to make space travel cheaper and more efficient. Tesla's new prototype continued its development, incorporating new, sustainable energy sources and cutting-edge autonomous systems. Musk's public persona began to shift once again. He no longer felt the need to constantly defend himself or his ideas. Instead, he let his work speak for him. The media coverage, once critical and skeptical, began to reflect his newfound confidence and resilience. The critics who had doubted him began to fall silent. They could see the progress Musk was making, the visionary products and technologies that were emerging from his companies. And although there were still plenty of challenges ahead, Musk was no longer consumed by the fear of failure. He had learned that true success wasn't about perfection. It was about perseverance. It was about rising after every fall, learning from every mistake, and continuing to chase the dream, no matter how big or impossible it seemed. As Musk sat in his office late one evening, reviewing the progress of his companies, he realized something profound: the journey wasn't about just achieving success. It was about pushing humanity forward, about showing people that anything was possible. He had already reshaped the future of cars, of energy, and of space travel. But the world was still waiting for more. And Musk knew, deep down, that he wasn't done yet. Let's go to Mars. Let's change the world, Musk thought to himself, a slight smile crossing his face. The future was still wide open, and he was ready for whatever came next. Elon Musk had always been driven by an insatiable desire to change the world. From revolutionizing electric cars to conquering space, his name had become synonymous with audacious innovation. But as his companies grew, so did the pressure. The world was watching, waiting for him to deliver on his bold promises. The Mars mission was gaining momentum, Tesla's new autonomous car was making waves, and SpaceX was on the brink of groundbreaking developments. But as Elon sat in his office late one evening, reviewing yet another round of reports from his teams, a new sense of uncertainty settled over him. Despite his unshakable confidence, the weight of responsibility was beginning to feel heavier than ever. He had always been able to defy the odds, but now, there were more stakeholders, more expectations, and more risks than he had ever imagined. The world had never been more captivated by Musk's genius. The media lauded him as a visionary, an entrepreneur who was reshaping industries and pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Yet beneath the surface, Musk was grappling with the strain of leadership. He had always thrived under pressure, but as Tesla's new car reached its final stages of development, the stakes felt even higher. The world wasn't just expecting a new product, they were expecting the next giant leap in automotive technology. The project was fraught with challenges, engineering obstacles, unpredictable costs, and the constant demand for perfection. Musk's team at Tesla was working tirelessly to meet deadlines, but the question loomed large in his mind: what if they failed? The pressure wasn't just external, it was internal as well. He had set the bar impossibly high for himself and his companies. But now, even as the future seemed so close, Musk realized that the very vision that had driven him for so long, his relentless pursuit of innovation, was starting to create cracks in the foundation of his life. The risk of failure had never felt so real. Musk's day-to-day life had become a whirlwind of meetings, deadlines, and press conferences. His team at SpaceX had made significant strides in the Mars mission, yet there were still so many unknowns. Musk had always prided himself on embracing uncertainty, but lately, the weight of the unknown seemed overwhelming. It wasn't the technical challenges that were troubling him, it was the fear that the dream might not live up to reality. What if humanity wasn't ready for Mars? What if Tesla's autonomous car, despite all the effort and resources poured into it, was a failure? For the first time in a long time, Musk found himself questioning everything: his vision, his decisions, even his ability to lead. The doubts crept in, despite his best efforts to silence them. He felt as if he were at a crossroads, unsure of which direction to take. In the midst of this internal crisis, Musk received a call from J.B. Straubel, his old friend and co-founder of Tesla. J.B. had been away for a while, focusing on other ventures, but his voice still carried the calm confidence that Musk so often relied on. "Elon, you've been quiet lately. I've heard the pressure's been getting to you. Talk to me, what's going on?" Musk had always admired J.B.'s steady demeanor. He was one of the few people who had been there since the very beginning, through the early struggles, the victories, and the relentless pursuit of something bigger. Musk hesitated for a moment before responding. "I don't know, JB. I've been feeling overwhelmed. It's not just about the cars or the rockets anymore. It's everything, the people, the expectations, the responsibility. I've always pushed myself, but now I'm not sure if I can deliver. What if everything falls apart?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, JB spoke, his voice measured but firm. "Elon, you've never been afraid of failure. You've failed before, and you've come back stronger every time. The thing is, you've always had the vision to see what others couldn't. You don't just innovate for the sake of it. You're building the future, and it's never going to be easy. But you can't let the fear of failure stop you from going after it. If anyone can make it happen, it's you." Musk felt a weight lift from his chest. JB's words were a reminder of why he had started this journey in the first place. It wasn't about the accolades or the fame, it was about pushing the limits of what humanity could achieve. For the first time in weeks, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. With newfound clarity, Musk began to shift his focus back to what truly mattered, the mission. The pressure of delivering a perfect product could no longer be his driving force. Instead, he needed to focus on the bigger picture, transforming the world, not just meeting deadlines. He gathered his top engineers at Tesla, SpaceX, and the Boring Company, bringing them together for a series of brainstorming sessions. He encouraged them to think boldly, to push beyond the limits of what seemed possible. The idea wasn't just to build new products, but to transform the industries that had defined the 20th century. In these meetings, Musk was no longer just the boss. He was a collaborator, encouraging his teams to challenge him, to question everything. The room was alive with ideas, with a sense of excitement that Musk hadn't felt in a long time. The conversations were no longer about survival, they were about the future. As the Mars mission continued to progress, Musk found himself re-energized by the possibilities ahead. He began to see the bigger picture more clearly. The road to Mars wasn't just about building rockets, it was about uniting humanity with a shared purpose. The potential for growth, exploration, and discovery was limitless. Back at Tesla, the autonomous car project also gained momentum. The engineers, inspired by Musk's renewed focus, worked harder than ever to push the boundaries of automotive technology. Musk knew that the car wouldn't just be about electric power, it would change the way people thought about transportation and mobility. The fear of failure that had once consumed him now seemed like a distant memory. It was no longer about avoiding failure, it was about embracing it, learning from it, and moving forward. Musk's relentless drive to innovate remained unchanged. He wasn't just chasing a dream, he was building the future. In the weeks that followed, Musk found a new sense of balance in his work. He continued to push his companies to achieve the impossible, but he also learned to take a step back when needed, to enjoy the journey. He knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but he was no longer afraid of what it might bring. The world was still watching, but this time, Musk wasn't concerned with proving anything to anyone. He had a mission, one that stretched far beyond personal achievements. It was a mission to transform the world, to take humanity to new heights, to explore the stars. And as the sun set on that rooftop in Los Angeles, Musk looked to the future with unwavering confidence. The journey was far from over, but he knew that as long as he kept moving forward, there would be no limit to what he could achieve. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The weight of expectations pressed on Elon Musk like a mountain he couldn't shake. After his courtroom drama, his name had become a symbol of both genius and controversy. The public was divided, some saw him as a hero, the leader of the future, while others doubted his ability to meet the promises he had made. Despite his internal resolve to push forward, he couldn't escape the undeniable pressure from his investors, the media, and the relentless eyes of the world. Musk had always known that ambition came with its challenges. The public's perception of him, whether positive or negative, had always been part of the deal. But now, as he stood on the balcony of his Tesla headquarters, watching the city stretch out below him, he couldn't ignore the fact that the pressure had reached a breaking point. It was an unspoken truth: Musk was used to being the disruptor, but now he was also the target. There were whispers from major investors, board members, and even employees questioning the sustainability of his vision. The stock prices of Tesla, while still impressive, had shown signs of instability, and SpaceX's mission to Mars seemed to many like an overly ambitious venture. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was Claire Stanton, his legal advisor, a voice of reason during many of his most challenging times. "Elon, we need to talk," Claire said, her voice grave. "I've had a few conversations with some of the major stakeholders. They're getting worried. They want more reassurance that Tesla will be able to survive the next 5 years, and they're concerned that Mars may not be the kind of return on investment they're expecting." Musk's heart sank. He had always thrived in uncertainty, but this was different. These were the very people who had believed in his dream, the ones who had poured their money into his vision. Their concerns felt like a personal affront. "Tell me they're not pulling out," Musk muttered, his voice laced with frustration. "No, not yet," Claire replied. "But they're demanding results. They're looking for a clear roadmap for the next phase of Tesla and SpaceX, and they want to know how you plan to address the growing skepticism. They want a strategy that will not only secure the future of the companies but also stabilize stock prices." Musk let out a breath, staring into the distance. He had always prided himself on being able to do the impossible, to defy expectations, but now the very same people who had supported him were the ones questioning him. Was this the price of progress? The next morning, Musk gathered his leadership teams at both Tesla and SpaceX. The air in the room was thick with anticipation. He knew this was more than just a meeting, it was a pivotal moment. The future of his companies, the credibility of his vision, rested on the decisions he would make in the coming hours. As he entered the conference room, his mind raced. He had to come up with a plan, one that would not only address the immediate concerns but also ensure that his vision for the future remained intact. The world was watching, and his ability to navigate these treacherous waters would determine whether he could continue his path forward or whether the tides of public opinion would drag him under. "We've got a lot of work to do," Musk began, his voice steady but tinged with urgency. "We're at a crossroads. SpaceX has the potential to change humanity's future, and Tesla's autonomous vehicle could change the way people think about cars. But there's something we need to do now, something that will calm the investors, restore confidence, and solidify our place in the market." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. The room was silent, everyone waiting for him to reveal his next move. "We need to show them that we're not just dreamers. We're builders. We're going to prove that these companies aren't just flashes in the pan, they're the future," Musk continued. "We're going to focus on innovation, but we're also going to focus on stability." He outlined a series of strategic initiatives, focusing on short-term objectives that would show immediate progress. Tesla would accelerate the production of the new vehicle, moving from concept to consumer faster than ever before. SpaceX would unveil a new, groundbreaking rocket that would not only take humans to Mars but also revolutionize space travel for the entire world. Musk's voice carried an energy that seemed to lift the room. The more he spoke, the more the weight on his shoulders seemed to lighten. There was a path forward, and it was one built on action, not just words. Over the next few weeks, Musk and his teams worked relentlessly to execute the plan. Tesla unveiled a prototype of its new vehicle, surpassing even Musk's own expectations. The car was sleek, futuristic, and fully autonomous, capable of navigating through city streets without a single human touch. The excitement was palpable, and the press buzzed with excitement. Meanwhile, SpaceX's engineers were working around the clock to finalize the next generation of their rockets. Musk was determined to make sure that the next mission would be more than just a success, it would be a demonstration to the world that his vision for space exploration was not just a pipe dream, but a real, tangible future. But even as progress was being made, the pressures of public opinion were unrelenting. The media coverage, both positive and negative, intensified. Investors watched closely, scrutinizing every move Musk made, every decision that could affect the future of his companies. Musk knew that the next few months would be critical, not just for him, but for everyone who had placed their trust in him. Late one night, Musk sat alone in his office, looking over the latest financial reports and market analyses. Despite the progress, the future still felt uncertain. The pressure, once again, seemed to build inside him. His phone buzzed, breaking his concentration. It was a text from J.B. Straubel. "You've got this, Elon. Keep pushing." Musk smiled at the simple message. It was a reminder that even in the midst of uncertainty, he wasn't alone. His team, his friends, and his vision had always been his greatest sources of strength. With a renewed sense of determination, Musk turned his attention back to the future. The road ahead was fraught with challenges, but he was more determined than ever to prove that he could overcome them. Not just for himself, but for the generations that would one day benefit from his vision. The world may have doubted him, but Musk knew one thing for sure: his journey was far from over. Elon Musk stood in the center of the Tesla factory, watching his team work with an intensity that matched his own. The hum of machines and the quiet chatter of engineers filled the air as workers rushed to assemble the new prototype vehicle. It was a race against time. The clock was ticking, and Musk knew that the next few months would determine everything. His vision was within reach, but so were the risks that could bring it all crashing down. The financial pressure had never been more intense. Tesla's stock was volatile, subject to the whims of the market, investor sentiments, and public opinion. SpaceX was making strides, but Mars felt farther away than ever. The scrutiny of the press and the skepticism from shareholders were constant reminders that failure was an ever-present possibility. Still, Musk believed that the key to overcoming these obstacles lay in taking risks, in embracing the unknown, just as he had done countless times before. But now, with the world watching, the stakes felt higher than ever. Tesla's autonomous car prototype had generated excitement, but it also brought a slew of challenges. The technology was advancing rapidly, but with that progress came complications. The car's AI system had been plagued by glitches during testing. One of the cars failed a critical maneuver during a demonstration, sparking questions about its readiness for mass production. For Musk, it felt like déjà vu. He had faced setbacks before, but this time, the stakes were much higher. Every setback seemed amplified. The media pounced on the failure, sensationalizing it and questioning whether Musk's vision was simply too ambitious. His inbox was flooded with messages from investors demanding reassurance. Was this another example of a grand idea that was too big to succeed? Musk was furious. The team had been working tirelessly for months, and the press was only interested in the negative. It was one of those moments when he felt the weight of the entire world on his shoulders. But Elon Musk had never been one to shy away from a challenge. His mind raced, formulating new strategies, new ways to salvage the project and prove the world wrong. There was no turning back now. In the midst of the stress, another blow hit Musk's personal life. A family member, his estranged father, had reached out. It wasn't a call for reconciliation, but more of a reminder of their fractured relationship. The conversation left Musk with an unsettling feeling. His father had always been critical of him, of his choices, his ambitions. And now, his words seemed to haunt him. "You'll never succeed," his father had said coldly. "You're playing with fire, Elon. You're going to burn everything to the ground." The words echoed in Musk's mind as he returned to the Tesla headquarters. It was just another voice in the growing chorus of doubt. Musk had faced opposition before, from venture capitalists, from industry experts, even from his own family, but the pressure of constant skepticism, both internal and external, had reached a fever pitch. But despite all of this, he couldn't shake his vision. He had to prove that it was possible. That dream of an interconnected, sustainable future, with Tesla's electric cars leading the charge and SpaceX paving the way to Mars, it was too important to abandon. And so, Musk pressed on. The breakthrough came unexpectedly, in the midst of what seemed like an unrelenting barrage of setbacks. It wasn't a grand moment of success, but rather a series of small, seemingly insignificant steps that began to align. The glitches in the autonomous car system were traced to a single line of faulty code. Once fixed, the car's AI ran smoother than expected. The production delays started to lessen. The team at Tesla found new efficiencies in the manufacturing process, allowing them to meet the tight production deadlines. At SpaceX, the new Falcon rocket was tested successfully, a key milestone in Musk's vision to take humanity beyond Earth's orbit. Though Mars was still years away, the success of the launch bolstered Musk's confidence. As the weeks passed, Musk began to see that perhaps the worst was behind him. He couldn't erase the doubts entirely, but he could prove that his vision wasn't just a pipe dream. It was something real, something tangible that was beginning to take shape. He wasn't just building cars or rockets, he was building the future. As Tesla's production ramped up, and with the successful launch of SpaceX's Falcon rocket, the media narrative began to shift. Journalists who had been critical now began to question their skepticism. The stories changed from criticisms of Musk's ambitious goals to discussions about his ability to innovate under pressure. He wasn't just the tech mogul with crazy ideas, he was now seen as the man who could turn impossible ideas into reality. But for Musk, it wasn't enough. He knew the battle for public perception would continue. The world was fickle, and just as quickly as they lifted him up, they could tear him down. The challenge was maintaining momentum and proving that his vision for a sustainable future was more than just a trend. Even as things began to turn around for Tesla and SpaceX, Musk was forced to confront the personal cost of his journey. Long hours, sleepless nights, and constant stress had taken a toll on his health. His relationships, once full of promise, now felt strained. The intense focus on his work had left little room for anything else. His family life, his personal well-being, they had all become secondary to his mission. Musk had always known that success came at a cost, but as he looked at himself in the mirror one evening, he wondered if he had gone too far. Was it worth it? He had dedicated his life to this mission, but at what cost? As the tension of the past months weighed on him, Musk realized that he couldn't continue at this pace forever. He needed to find balance. Perhaps the greatest breakthrough of all wasn't technological, it was personal. It was realizing that in order to change the world, he first needed to take care of himself and those around him. The world might need his vision, but his. The next few weeks passed in relative quiet. Tesla's new prototype was being heralded as a game-changer, SpaceX's latest achievements were front-page news, and Musk had become somewhat of a hero once again. The public perception was starting to stabilize, and for the first time in a while, he felt a sense of calm. But he knew better than to get comfortable. This was just a moment in time. The journey ahead was long, and the obstacles were still many. As he stood on the rooftop of Tesla's headquarters once again, gazing out at the world, Musk realized something crucial. His vision for the future wasn't just about building cars or rockets. It was about overcoming the impossible. It was about proving that the impossible could be done, and that the journey, with all its struggles, was worth it. The battle was far from over, but Musk was ready. He had faced the storm, weathered the doubts, and emerged stronger for it. Now, he was more determined than ever to see his vision come to life. The sun was setting over the Pacific, casting a golden glow over the vast expanse of the SpaceX launch pad. Elon Musk stood there, arms crossed, his eyes fixed on the horizon. It was a moment of reflection for him, a moment that felt almost surreal. After everything he had endured, public scandals, lawsuits, failed launches, and endless criticisms, he was about to face the ultimate test. The mission to Mars was nearing its critical stage, and it wasn't just about technology anymore. This was about legacy. The countdown clock ticked steadily in the background, its soft, rhythmic sound serving as a constant reminder of how close they were to the most ambitious achievement in human history. Musk had poured everything into this project, more than just his resources or his companies, he had invested his very soul. The mission was his defining purpose, the thing that would define his legacy long after he was gone. And yet, even now, standing on the precipice of this grand adventure, there was an unsettling feeling gnawing at him. Could they pull it off? Could SpaceX truly send humans to Mars? Could the vision he had held for so many years finally come to fruition, or would it all come crashing down in a single, catastrophic moment? Musk's phone buzzed. It was a message from Claire Stanton, his legal advisor, one of the few people who had always remained by his side through thick and thin. "Elon, I know this mission means everything to you, but don't forget, you've got a responsibility to more than just your dream. People are looking to you for leadership, not just innovation. Make sure that's clear in your message to the world." Musk stared at the message for a moment, considering her words. He had always been driven by the need to do something extraordinary, but he also knew that being a leader meant more than just achieving the impossible, it meant carrying the weight of responsibility for the people who followed him. The pressure of being the figurehead for a movement larger than himself, larger than his companies, had only grown. With a deep sigh, Musk put the phone down and looked out over the launch pad once more. It was time to make a decision, not just for him, but for the world. The mission to Mars wasn't just about conquering space, it was about showing humanity that anything was possible. He had to make sure that the people who believed in him saw more than just a man with a dream, they saw a leader, someone who could lead them into a new era of possibility. The next morning, Musk gathered his team at SpaceX headquarters. The energy in the room was palpable. Engineers, astronauts, technicians, and executives were all gathered in anticipation. The mission to Mars was still in its final stages, but Musk knew that one last push was necessary to ensure everything would go according to plan. "I've been thinking about the mission and our future," Musk began, his voice steady but intense. "This isn't just about sending rockets into space. This is about more than technology, it's about showing the world that we can do the impossible, but also that we can do it responsibly." There was a murmur of agreement in the room, but Musk could see that some were still uncertain. The risks were enormous, and some feared that any failure would set back the dream of colonizing Mars by decades. Musk's vision, while inspiring, had always been precarious, teetering on the edge of what was possible and what was foolhardy. "Let's be clear," Musk continued. "We can't just send rockets to Mars and hope for the best. We need to show the world that we have a plan. A plan not just for today, but for tomorrow. We're going to focus not just on getting there, but on making sure we can live there, sustainably. If we can create a self-sustaining colony on Mars, we will prove that humanity is capable of surviving and thriving anywhere. That's the real mission." The room went quiet as the weight of his words settled in. This wasn't just about the mission, it was about making history, about creating a legacy that would shape the future of humankind. As Musk's plans began to unfold, the media began to take notice. The press, which had once been hostile, now had a new narrative. Elon Musk wasn't just a billionaire with a dream. He was a visionary who had shifted the conversation from the realms of science fiction to tangible reality. But along with the praise came criticism. Some pundits questioned whether Musk's Mars mission was realistic. They pointed to the immense challenges, the billions of dollars required, the dangers of space travel, and the uncertain future of humanity on an inhospitable planet. Despite all the progress Musk had made, some still viewed the mission as a grand gamble, an overextension of his resources and energy. And then there were the naysayers who said Musk was only doing this to make himself immortal, to cement his place in history at all costs. The narrative, for all its support, was still fractured. Musk, who had long been used to operating under pressure, now found himself facing an existential question: could he make his dream a reality without losing everything in the process? The day of the launch arrived. The energy at the SpaceX launch pad was electric. Thousands of spectators had gathered to witness the historic moment. The media was in full force, broadcasting the event live across the globe. Musk stood in front of the massive rocket, feeling the familiar rush of adrenaline, the sense of urgency that came with the final moments before liftoff. He stood there, his mind quiet, focused on the mission at hand. Everything he had worked for, his entire career, his companies, his reputation, was culminating in this moment. If the launch succeeded, it would be a defining achievement, a moment that would be remembered for centuries. But if it failed, it would be more than just a setback. It would be a blow to the entire vision of humanity's future in space. The countdown reached its final seconds, and the world held its breath. Musk felt his heart pound in his chest as the rocket's engines roared to life. In that instant, the tension in the air melted away. The rocket surged upwards, pushing past the limits of gravity, leaving Earth behind. Musk watched it ascend, his eyes filled with awe. For a moment, it seemed like the impossible was happening. Humanity was on the verge of something monumental, and Musk, once again, had led them there. The roar of the engines faded, and for a split second, Musk allowed himself to believe that this time, this mission, would be the one that secured his legacy. But in the back of his mind, he knew that the hardest part was still ahead. The road to Mars was long, and there were many obstacles left to overcome. Yet, for the first time in a long while, Musk felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. The mission to Mars wasn't just a dream anymore. It was becoming a reality. The initial celebration was brief. Musk knew that the true test was only just beginning. The rocket had launched successfully, but there was still a long road ahead. As the world watched in awe, the first stage of the Mars mission seemed like a flawless success. However, behind the scenes, the pressure was mounting, and complications were beginning to brew. The media buzzed with excitement, as headlines around the world declared the historic success. Elon Musk's SpaceX rocket sets course for Mars, humanity's first step toward the red planet. But Musk wasn't celebrating. He had learned long ago that the real work began after the cheers faded. Days after the successful launch, the SpaceX team received unsettling news from their satellite systems. One of the key components of the rocket, an advanced engine control system that was supposed to ensure smooth propulsion and trajectory adjustments, was malfunctioning. The news sent shockwaves through the entire mission team. If the system failed in the coming days, the entire mission could go off course, possibly stranding the crew in space. For Musk, the weight of the situation felt crushing. Space exploration was never simple, but the stakes had never been higher. The mission was now in jeopardy, and this wasn't just a technical issue, it was a matter of human lives. Musk stood in his office at SpaceX, his mind racing. The team was working around the clock to fix the issue, but Musk knew that a mistake could lead to disaster. The possibility of failure was too great. He ran a hand through his hair, his brow furrowed. The pressure was unbearable, and the success of the Mars mission was at risk of becoming a fatal mistake. Everything was on the line: his companies, his reputation, and the dream of humanity's future in space. Musk called an emergency meeting with the engineers and mission control staff. The mood in the room was tense as the team huddled around a large screen displaying telemetry data. The malfunction was more complex than anticipated, and there were too many variables at play. The engineers were scrambling for a solution, but there was no clear fix in sight. "We can't afford to lose the mission," Musk said, his voice steady but laced with concern. "We're not just sending a rocket into space, we're sending a symbol of hope. People are depending on us." A young engineer, his face drawn with exhaustion, spoke up. "We've tried recalibrating the system, but the failure keeps happening. If it continues, we won't be able to maintain the proper trajectory, and that could lead to a catastrophic failure once we're halfway to Mars." Musk's pulse quickened. Catastrophic failure. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, it felt like the walls were closing in. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each person present. This wasn't just about fixing a technical issue anymore, it was about saving everything they had worked for. In the following hours, Musk found himself buried in data, poring over reports and suggestions from the engineers. But the deeper he dug, the more complicated the issue became. There were too many variables, too many potential risks. It was a delicate balancing act, and every decision he made seemed to carry the potential for disaster. As the night wore on, Musk began to feel the weight of the leadership he had always dreamed of. It wasn't just about innovation or breaking boundaries, it was about making decisions that could save lives. The responsibility of that burden was overwhelming, and for the first time in years, Musk questioned whether he had made the right choices. Could he really carry the weight of this mission? Could he live with the consequences if things went wrong? It was then that Claire Stanton, his legal advisor and close confidant, entered the room. She could see the exhaustion etched into his face and the tension in his shoulders. Without a word, she walked up to him and placed a hand on his arm. "Elon, I know you're carrying all this on your shoulders," she said quietly. "But you can't do it alone. You've built a team that believes in you. Let them help you." Musk turned to her, meeting her gaze. She was right. This wasn't just his mission, it was everyone's. He had to trust in his team, trust in the people who had stood by him through thick and thin. The road to Mars was never going to be easy, but they had come this far together. Musk made a decision. He called in the best engineers from every corner of SpaceX and asked them to work through the night on an emergency fix. There was no time to waste. With Claire's guidance, Musk formulated a contingency plan, a last-ditch effort to manually override the malfunctioning system and recalibrate the rocket's trajectory. It was risky, dangerous, and it might not work, but it was their best shot at saving the mission. As the team scrambled to implement the plan, Musk stood back and watched. His mind raced as the clock ticked down to the final hours before the rocket would reach a critical point in its journey. He knew the risk: if the fix failed, the crew on board would be stranded. If it succeeded, they could continue their journey, but only by the slimmest of margins. It was a gamble, but Musk had always been willing to take risks. He knew that the most significant breakthroughs often came from moments of crisis. And now, with everything on the line, he would push the limits once again. The countdown to the crucial trajectory correction began. The team had finished the adjustments, and all eyes were on the system's monitor. Musk stood in front of the screen, his heart pounding in his chest. He watched as the numbers ticked down, every second feeling like an eternity. Finally, the moment came. The recalibration process was initiated. The room fell silent as the systems began to process the data. Seconds felt like hours. Musk's breath caught in his throat as the telemetry data began to stabilize. The rocket had corrected its course. "Status?" Musk asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "System stable," one of the engineers replied, their voice filled with cautious optimism. Musk exhaled slowly, feeling the weight lift from his chest. It wasn't over, not yet, but for the first time in days, he allowed himself to believe that they had a chance. They had faced a crisis, and they had come through it together. Though the crisis was averted, the mission was far from safe. Musk knew there would be more challenges ahead. There was no room for complacency, not with the entire future of humanity's presence in space hanging in the balance. But for the first time in weeks, Musk allowed himself a moment of relief. He had taken the reins in the most critical moment of his career, and in doing so, had ensured that humanity's journey to Mars would continue. As the rocket hurtled toward Mars, Musk sat alone in his office, gazing out at the stars. He had faced the ultimate test. And while he had emerged victorious this time, he knew that the hardest challenges were still ahead. The tension of the mission to Mars seemed to weigh even heavier after the crisis was averted. Musk had worked tirelessly to fix the problem, but now, with the journey into deep space well underway, something new began to stir. The world, still in awe of the seemingly miraculous fix, had moved on, but the real battle was being fought behind closed doors. There were whispers, rumors, small cracks in the armor of SpaceX and the mission that no one had expected. Musk had always been surrounded by people who believed in his vision, but as the mission grew more complex, the stakes higher, not everyone's loyalty remained pure. It all started with a confidential meeting Musk had with Claire Stanton, his legal advisor. They sat together late one night in the SpaceX headquarters, discussing upcoming plans and contingencies for the mission. Musk had grown to trust Claire over the years, but recently, she had seemed different. More distant. Less focused on the mission and more concerned about the financial and legal aspects. Elon, Claire began, her voice measured but tinged with something that didn't sit right with Musk. I've been going over the numbers again. There's a lot at stake here, more than you think. I've seen a few irregularities in the accounts that need addressing. We can't afford any missteps, especially with the investors breathing down our necks. Musk raised an eyebrow. Irregularities? What do you mean? Claire hesitated, the usual calmness of her demeanor now replaced with unease. There are funds that have been rerouted. Small amounts at first, just a few million here and there. But it's starting to look like someone's been siphoning money from SpaceX accounts. I'm not sure who yet, but it's more than just a clerical mistake. Musk's heart sank. Someone's stealing from us? I think it's more than that. It could be sabotage. Her words hung in the air, thick with implications. Musk stared at her, trying to digest what she was saying. Sabotage. He had trusted everyone on his team, but now, the seed of doubt had been planted. The next few days were filled with tension. Musk couldn't stop thinking about Claire's warning. He knew that the financial stability of SpaceX and the Mars mission was crucial, but something about the situation felt off. Why would someone inside the company be siphoning funds, especially at such a critical time? Musk instructed his most trusted team members to conduct a thorough audit of SpaceX's accounts. He wanted answers, and he wanted them fast. However, the results of the audit left him more confused than ever. On the surface, everything appeared fine. But Musk knew something was wrong. There had to be a leak somewhere, someone playing a dangerous game. And that's when it hit him, the sabotage wasn't just financial. Someone was actively working against the mission, against him, from the inside. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that Claire's warning might have been a mere distraction. There were too many things that didn't add up. He felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Musk's suspicions grew darker as he began digging deeper. He started questioning everyone, his engineers, his executives, even the astronauts preparing for the Mars landing. But no one seemed to know anything, and yet Musk could feel the whispers of betrayal lurking just beneath the surface. The breakthrough came when he discovered that a high-ranking executive had been in constant communication with a rival aerospace company, one that had always been vocal about its competition with SpaceX. Musk's gut instinct told him this wasn't a coincidence. He tracked down the communications, meetings, encrypted messages, and found something that made his blood run cold. There it was, a clear pattern. A senior member of his team had been leaking vital information to one of SpaceX's competitors. The sabotage wasn't just financial, it was strategic. The leaks were compromising the mission's security, its technological advancements, and its funding. Musk wasted no time. He arranged a private meeting with the suspected individual, a high-ranking engineer named David Thompson, who had been with SpaceX for nearly a decade. David had been a trusted ally, a brilliant mind who had helped shape many of the company's key innovations. But now, standing in front of Musk, his face was a mask of indifference. Elon, I don't know what you think you found, but I swear, I've never done anything to jeopardize SpaceX, David said, his voice calm, almost too calm. Musk leaned in, his eyes cold. I know what you've been doing, David. I know about the communications with the other company. I know about the leaks. You've been sabotaging the mission. David's expression didn't change. You've got it all wrong. What I've been doing. It's for the good of the mission. Musk's pulse quickened. You've been working against me, against SpaceX, and against everything we've worked for. How long has this been going on? David paused, and for the first time, there was a flicker of emotion in his eyes. I never wanted it to come to this. But the truth is, Elon, you're driving this company too hard. You're pushing the envelope without regard for the consequences. SpaceX is too big, too risky. It's going to fail, and when it does, I don't want to be the one left holding the pieces. Musk stood there, stunned by the revelation. The man he had trusted had turned against him, believing that the company, the mission, and even Musk himself were too far gone to succeed. The betrayal stung more than he had expected, but it also lit a fire in him. You're wrong, Musk said, his voice cold but firm. You're making a mistake. I will never stop fighting for this mission. And I'll make sure you pay for what you've done. David's face hardened, and for a moment, Musk saw a flash of defiance in his eyes. You won't win this, Elon. There's too much at stake. You can't fight this battle alone. But Musk was resolute. He knew that he had come too far to let a single betrayal destroy everything he had worked for. This mission was about more than just sending rockets to Mars, it was about proving that humanity could overcome any obstacle. And he wouldn't let one person's doubt derail the vision. The fallout from the confrontation was swift. David Thompson was removed from his position immediately, and an internal investigation was launched to ensure that no further damage had been done. But the damage wasn't just technical, it was personal. Musk had never expected betrayal from within his inner circle. It was a sobering reminder that even the greatest dreams could be undermined by the very people who helped build them. As Musk sat in his office, staring at the communication logs and the trail of lies, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The Mars mission wasn't just about technology. It was about the future, about proving that humanity could accomplish the impossible. And no matter how many people tried to tear it down, he wouldn't stop fighting for it. The betrayal was a blow to Musk, but it wasn't the only storm on the horizon. The world of high-stakes space exploration was not just a battleground for technology, but for legal battles, financial disputes, and political maneuvering. Musk had always expected the usual challenges, investors demanding results, government regulations, and the occasional media scandal, but what he wasn't prepared for was the legal war that was about to unfold. A few days after the confrontation with David Thompson, Musk received unsettling news: a major lawsuit was being filed against SpaceX. The plaintiffs were a coalition of rival aerospace companies, frustrated with SpaceX's dominance in the space industry. They had found a legal loophole, an obscure clause in space law, and were accusing SpaceX of patent infringement on a key technology used in the Mars mission. The claim was not just a technicality, it was a direct attack on the very foundation of SpaceX's operations. Musk sat at his desk, staring at the legal papers in disbelief. This lawsuit wasn't just a nuisance, it was a calculated strike, a move to cripple SpaceX at a time when the company was most vulnerable. If the case went to trial and SpaceX lost, they would be forced to pay out billions in damages, not to mention the intellectual property rights they would lose. But Musk was no stranger to legal battles. He had faced adversaries before, Tesla had fought numerous patent infringement cases, and even SpaceX had weathered challenges in the past. But this time, the stakes were higher. The Mars mission depended on SpaceX's success, and any setback could jeopardize humanity's future in space. Musk knew that he couldn't fight this battle alone, so he enlisted the help of his top legal team. Among them was Claire Stanton, his trusted advisor, who had been instrumental in guiding SpaceX through previous legal hurdles. Together, they began formulating a strategy to defend against the lawsuit. It's not just about winning this case, Elon, Claire said one evening as they sat in the conference room, going through the legal documents. It's about making a statement. If we lose this battle, it could set a precedent for the entire industry. Other companies will think they can challenge us any time they want. Musk nodded, his mind already racing. I'm not going to let them take us down with a loophole. We've worked too hard for this. Claire leaned forward. We'll need to go on the offensive. We can counter the claim by arguing that their patent is invalid. We have the technology, and we've developed it independently. But we'll need experts in space law, engineers, and industry insiders to back us up. Musk was resolute. Let's do whatever it takes. We can't afford to lose this. As soon as the lawsuit was filed, the media jumped into action. Headlines across the world screamed about the legal challenges facing SpaceX, with speculation running wild about the potential consequences. Musk's personal and professional life became the subject of constant media scrutiny. The public was divided, some supported him, believing he could overcome any challenge, while others questioned whether SpaceX's ambitions had gotten too big for its own good. Musk had always been used to the spotlight, but this was different. The lawsuit threatened to overshadow everything: SpaceX's progress on the Mars mission, Tesla's advancements, and his own legacy. Yet, he refused to be intimidated. He took to social media, sharing his thoughts with his millions of followers. "Don't let them win," Musk tweeted. "We will fight, and we will win. The future of humanity in space is at stake." The tweet quickly went viral, and Musk supporters rallied behind him. It was clear that the world was watching closely. This legal battle had become about more than just patents. It was about proving that the impossible could be achieved, no matter the odds. The legal proceedings began in earnest, and Musk found himself in the middle of a high-stakes courtroom drama. The opposing lawyers were relentless, focusing on every detail of SpaceX's technology, trying to prove that the company had infringed on the patents of their clients. They called expert witnesses, engineers, and legal professionals to testify against SpaceX. But Musk wasn't backing down. He had assembled a team of the best legal minds, including top patent attorneys and industry experts, to counter the claims. Claire led the charge, her expertise in space law proving invaluable. Together, they dissected the evidence, finding holes in the plaintiffs' arguments and inconsistencies in their testimonies. The first court appearance was intense. Musk sat quietly in the courtroom, his gaze fixed on the opposing team as they presented their case. The tension in the air was palpable. But Musk knew that his team was prepared. When it was his turn to speak, he stood up with quiet confidence. "The allegations against SpaceX are unfounded," Musk said, his voice clear and steady. "We have developed our technology independently, and any claims of infringement are based on assumptions, not facts. Our mission is not just about profit, it's about pushing the boundaries of what's possible for humanity." The judge, a no-nonsense figure, listened carefully, and after the session, Musk felt cautiously optimistic. The battle was far from over, but it was clear that they were making a strong case. As the case progressed, Musk realized that a simple legal defense wouldn't be enough. He needed to turn the tables. So, he and Claire crafted a bold new strategy, one that would not only defend SpaceX's technology but also disrupt the plaintiff's case entirely. Musk knew that the opposition had underestimated the power of SpaceX's technology and the mission to Mars. The Mars mission was more than just a corporate project, it was a beacon of hope for humanity's future. Musk decided to use that to their advantage. "We need to make them understand," Musk told Claire, "this isn't just about patents. This is about the future of space exploration. If we lose this case, it's not just SpaceX that suffers, it's humanity." Together, they decided to present a new angle in court, one that framed the entire case as a larger issue of progress and innovation. They would bring in high-profile experts, industry leaders, and even political figures who could testify about the importance of the Mars mission. They would argue that protecting SpaceX's technology was vital to the advancement of space exploration itself. As the trial neared its conclusion, the legal team made their final arguments. Musk's strategy was bold, and it was paying off. The plaintiffs were unable to keep up with the shifting narrative. The media was on Musk's side, with public opinion turning against the rivals who had dared to challenge SpaceX in such a pivotal moment. Musk sat in the courtroom, his heart racing. He knew that the outcome of this case would define the future of SpaceX, and the future of humanity's journey to Mars. When the judge finally delivered her verdict, the room fell silent. Everyone was waiting for the decision that would either make or break everything. The courtroom was silent as the judge prepared to deliver her ruling. Musk sat at the edge of his seat, the weight of the case pressing on him. The legal battle over the patent infringement had consumed weeks, if not months, of his life. Every detail, every piece of evidence, every argument had led to this moment. The fate of SpaceX, and the entire Mars mission, hung in the balance. The judge, a stern woman in her 50s with an air of authority, glanced over her notes one last time. The tension in the room was palpable. It wasn't just a courtroom, it felt like the entire future of humanity's journey into space was waiting for the verdict. Musk's gaze was fixed on the judge, his mind racing through the highs and lows of the battle that had led to this point. And then, the moment arrived. "I have reviewed all of the evidence presented in this case," the judge began, her voice calm and measured, "and after careful consideration, I find in favor of SpaceX. The claims of patent infringement have been dismissed, and the defendant is cleared of all charges." For a moment, Musk didn't move. It felt surreal, like the weight of the world had just been lifted off his shoulders. The room erupted into a mixture of cheers and applause from his legal team, but Musk remained seated, his mind racing as the full implications of the ruling began to settle in. This was a victory not just for SpaceX, but for the entire vision of human exploration beyond Earth. As the lawyers and legal advisors gathered around him, congratulating him on the win, Musk took a deep breath, processing everything that had just happened. It was a hard-fought battle, and for a moment, he had feared the worst. But now, the ruling had been handed down, and it was a clear message: SpaceX could continue its mission unimpeded. News of the victory spread like wildfire across the globe. The media coverage was explosive. Headlines proclaimed that Musk and SpaceX had won a significant legal battle, and many commentators hailed the ruling as a turning point for the future of space exploration. For Musk, the victory was bittersweet. It had been a hard-fought war, and though the lawsuit was over, the emotional toll lingered. He had seen just how fragile trust could be, even among the most loyal members of his team, and how easily a few enemies could disrupt everything he had built. Claire Stanton, his trusted legal advisor, couldn't have been more relieved. She had been by Musk's side throughout the entire ordeal, handling the nuances of the case and pushing for the aggressive defense strategy that ultimately led to their success. "Elon, we did it," Claire said with a smile, her eyes bright with relief. "You're clear. SpaceX is clear. We can focus on what matters now, the mission." Musk nodded slowly, his thoughts still lingering on the long months of uncertainty. "Yeah, but this was just one battle. There will be others. The higher we go, the harder they'll try to knock us down. We can't stop now." His resolve was unwavering. The Mars mission was still on track, but Musk knew better than anyone that space exploration was not a smooth ride. Every step forward would come with new obstacles, and he needed to be prepared for them. That night, after the legal victory, Musk found himself standing alone on the balcony of his home, staring up at the stars. The sky was clear, and for a moment, the vastness of the universe seemed almost overwhelming. He had always looked to the stars with hope, but tonight, his thoughts were more grounded. It had been a long journey to get to this point. The mission to Mars was more than just a project, it was his life's work, a dream that had kept him going through the toughest times. But the road had been full of obstacles, the betrayal of trusted colleagues, the constant battle for resources and attention, the media scrutiny, and now, the legal war that had threatened to tear everything apart. As he gazed up at the stars, Musk's mind wandered to the larger question that had driven him for years. What was the purpose of all of this? Why push humanity to the edge of the impossible? It was a simple answer, one he had known deep down for a long time: humanity needed to reach for the stars. The Earth wasn't enough. Space was the final frontier, and it was time for humanity to take its place in the universe. Musk knew that the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but he had learned one valuable lesson from the legal battle: never give up. He had faced the toughest odds and come out victorious, and now, there was nothing that could stop him. The victory in court didn't mean the mission to Mars was suddenly smooth sailing. If anything, it only made the stakes higher. SpaceX was now more visible than ever before, and all eyes were on them. Investors, engineers, politicians, everyone was watching to see if the company could truly pull off the impossible. Musk met with his engineering team the following day, gathering them in a conference room to discuss the next phase of the Mars mission. The legal battle had been distracting, but now it was time to focus on the future. "We're not done yet," Musk said, his voice resolute. "The journey to Mars is just beginning. We've won the legal war, but the real war is out there, on Mars. We've got to make it happen." The room filled with determined nods. The mission was not just a dream anymore, it was a reality, and every single person in that room had a role to play in making it happen. They knew the risks, the sacrifices, and the challenges ahead. But they were united in their mission. Musk looked around at his team, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. This was what they had worked for. This was the moment that would define humanity's future. And he would stop at nothing to make sure they succeeded. As the days passed, SpaceX moved forward, stronger than ever. The legal war was behind them, but new challenges awaited. The path to Mars would require even more innovation, more resources, and more collaboration. But with the ruling in their favor, Musk knew they were one step closer to realizing the dream. With the Mars mission gaining momentum, and SpaceX's reputation solidified, Musk's vision for the future was clearer than ever before. Space exploration was no longer just an ambitious goal, it was a tangible, achievable reality. And the world was watching. Musk had faced the greatest challenge of his career and emerged victorious. The battle for the future of humanity had just begun. With the courtroom drama behind him, Elon Musk now faced the next, even more daunting challenge: preparing for the Mars mission. The court victory had restored confidence in SpaceX, but Musk knew that it was just the beginning. Now, the real work began. The eyes of the world were on him and his company, watching closely as SpaceX continued its race to build the technology that would carry humanity to another planet. As the weeks passed, SpaceX's headquarters in Hawthorne, California became a whirlwind of activity. Engineers, scientists, and experts from all fields were hard at work, collaborating on the most ambitious space mission in history. The pressure was immense, and every single detail mattered. Musk's dreams of reaching Mars were within grasp, but the hurdles were taller than ever. Musk stood in the heart of SpaceX's development labs, surrounded by his team of engineers. The massive whiteboard was covered in equations, diagrams, and calculations, everything they needed to solve in order to make Mars a reality. But it wasn't just the rocket technology that Musk was focused on, it was the entire ecosystem needed for life on Mars. The first hurdle was transportation. SpaceX had already made incredible progress with its Falcon 9 rockets, but the journey to Mars required something even more advanced. They were building the Starship, a spacecraft capable of carrying humans and cargo across the vast expanse of space. Musk had always been clear about his vision for Starship: it needed to be reusable, capable of landing on Mars, and able to carry a crew of explorers. The goal was to make space travel as routine as flying an airplane. Musk turned to his team, who were standing around the blueprints for Starship. "We've come this far," he said, his voice filled with a rare intensity. "But we need to go further. The technology we're developing will define the future of humanity. It's not just about getting to Mars, it's about sustaining life there." He paused for a moment, looking at the faces of his engineers. There was no doubt in his mind that they could accomplish this. They had already built rockets capable of landing back on Earth, and now they were aiming for a far more challenging task, landing on a foreign planet and creating a self-sustaining colony. The engineers nodded in unison, aware of the responsibility on their shoulders. The clock was ticking, and every decision, every design, every choice mattered. While the design and construction of Starship were proceeding, Musk knew that they couldn't just rely on tests in the laboratory or simulations on Earth. They needed to experience what it would be like to live on Mars long before any crew ever set foot on the red planet. That's when Musk proposed a new initiative, a Mars simulation program. The idea was to create an environment here on Earth that mimicked the harsh conditions of Mars. For a team of SpaceX scientists and engineers, Musk arranged a mission simulation, where they would spend months in isolation, living in a controlled environment that replicated the conditions on Mars as closely as possible. It was a bold move, but Musk had always believed in pushing the boundaries of human experience. If they could survive the mental and physical challenges of the simulation, it would prove that they could endure the same conditions on Mars. The simulation took place in a remote desert location, surrounded by nothing but barren landscapes. The team would live in a sealed habitat, with limited supplies and no contact with the outside world. They would rely on technology to produce oxygen, water, and food, just as they would on Mars. The project was risky. Isolation could quickly turn into mental exhaustion, and the psychological effects of confinement were well documented. But Musk believed it was essential. The success of the Mars mission depended on human resilience as much as technological advancement. "I want this to be as real as possible," Musk said to the team as they prepared for the simulation. "This is the first step. You're not just here for the science, you're here to prove that humans can live on Mars. Everything we do here will lay the groundwork for the future of space exploration." The team was both excited and apprehensive. They were pioneers, testing the limits of human endurance in an environment that was as close to Mars as Earth could provide. It was one thing to talk about sending humans to Mars, but it was another to face the challenges head-on. As the weeks passed in the simulation, the team began to feel the strain of isolation. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The artificial environment began to feel less like a controlled experiment and more like a tiny, suffocating world in its own right. The confined quarters, the lack of direct sunlight, and the ever-present reminder that they were living in a simulation began to take its toll. The team had been handpicked for their physical and mental fortitude, but even the strongest minds were beginning to crack. Musk checked in on the team regularly, communicating with them through a limited internet connection. He knew that the simulation was going to be challenging, but he also understood that it was necessary. "Remember," he said during one of his calls, "this is temporary. What we're doing here will change everything. You're not just testing technology, you're testing humanity's ability to live on another planet. Don't forget why we're doing this." The words resonated with the team, who were beginning to show signs of fatigue. They had been living in isolation for months, their minds constantly occupied with the tasks at hand. But Musk's message reminded them of the bigger picture. This was about the future. It was about setting the stage for the next great leap in human history. One evening, as the team gathered to discuss their progress, something shifted. The mental strain had reached its peak, but it was also the catalyst for a breakthrough. Dr. Sandra Alvarez, one of the team's lead engineers, stood up and made a bold suggestion. "We've been thinking about this all wrong," she said. "We're trying to simulate Mars, but we're not taking into account how the human mind needs to adapt to an entirely new environment. Maybe we need to think about how to thrive, not just survive." Musk, who had been listening intently, nodded. "What are you suggesting?" "We need to shift the focus from just the technology of survival to the psychology of thriving on Mars. We need to develop ways for people to feel connected to the Earth, to each other, and to the mission itself. We need to make life on Mars meaningful." Musk's face lit up. This was the kind of thinking he had hoped for. It wasn't just about surviving, it was about finding ways to make life sustainable, fulfilling, and rewarding. He turned to his team. "Let's make it happen. We can't just simulate life on Mars. We need to rethink how we approach living on another planet. This will change everything. The Mars simulation was a turning point for SpaceX. It had proven that the technology was progressing, but it had also shown that human resilience and psychological well-being were just as important as the machinery that would carry them to Mars. With the lessons learned from the simulation, SpaceX was able to refine its approach to the Mars mission, making sure that future astronauts would be ready for both the technological and psychological challenges they would face. It wasn't just about rockets, it was about people. And so, with renewed determination, Musk and his team pressed forward. The countdown to Mars had begun, and with every passing day, the dream of humanity's first steps on another planet became one step closer to reality. The day had finally arrived. Elon Musk stood in front of the gleaming Starship prototype, his heart beating with anticipation. The countdown to the historic launch was just hours away, and the world was watching. SpaceX's ambitious plan to send humans to Mars was no longer a distant dream, it was about to become a reality. The culmination of years of hard work, setbacks, and breakthroughs was now on display for all to see. The final preparations for the launch were underway. SpaceX engineers, technicians, and support staff were bustling around the massive launch pad, checking and double-checking every system. The powerful rumble of the Starship's engines echoed across the facility as final tests were conducted. Every detail had been meticulously planned. This mission was not just a test flight, it was the future of humanity's space exploration. Musk stood alongside his top team members, his gaze never straying from the rocket. He had been here before, watching as his ideas took shape, but this moment felt different. This was the point of no return. If Starship succeeded, it would mark the beginning of humanity's ability to travel beyond Earth and colonize other planets. If it failed, SpaceX's future, and his own vision for Mars, would be in jeopardy. But Musk wasn't one to shy away from risk. He thrived in it. He had built SpaceX from the ground up, overcoming countless obstacles along the way. Now, his ultimate test was here. "This is it," he said quietly, his voice full of resolve. "We're about to make history." The final countdown began, and the tension was palpable. Onlookers gathered from all over the world, NASA representatives, investors, journalists, and countless fans who had followed Musk's journey for years. The launch had been delayed a few times due to technical issues, but now, everything was in place. As the clock ticked down, Musk's mind flashed back to the early days of SpaceX. The company had started with a simple, audacious goal: to make space travel affordable and accessible. The road had been rocky, failures, technical challenges, and financial struggles had almost derailed the company at times. But Musk had pushed forward, and now, SpaceX was on the verge of a breakthrough that could change everything. The crowd held its breath as the seconds counted down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. A deafening roar filled the air as the Starship engines ignited, sending the rocket skyward. The launch was flawless. The massive spacecraft rose gracefully into the sky, its engines burning bright as it ascended into the heavens. Musk stood frozen, watching as the rocket disappeared into the clouds. The moment he had worked for, dreamed about for years, was finally happening. It was a powerful, emotional moment, one that Musk would never forget. It wasn't just a victory for SpaceX, but for the entire vision of humanity's future in space. While the launch of Starship was a major milestone, it was only the first step. The true test lay ahead. SpaceX had to prove that Starship could travel to Mars, land, and return safely. But Musk was confident. He knew that the technology was sound, and more importantly, he knew that his team was capable of pulling it off. The journey to Mars was long, about 7 months in space, but the most critical part of the mission would be landing. SpaceX had been testing and refining Starship's landing capabilities for years, but Mars presented unique challenges. The planet's thin atmosphere made landing difficult, and the high gravity meant that a soft touchdown would be harder to achieve. SpaceX engineers had spent countless hours testing Starship's landings on Earth, but Mars was another beast entirely. Would the technology hold up under the extreme conditions? Could they successfully land on the Martian surface and begin the process of establishing the first human colony? As the weeks passed, SpaceX continued to perfect the landing procedures. Musk's team developed sophisticated algorithms to adjust the rocket's trajectory and velocity in real time, based on Mars' unpredictable weather conditions and atmospheric density. Every detail was crucial, the slightest mistake could mean disaster. But Musk's belief in his team never wavered. He was always the first to push them to take risks, to think bigger, and to challenge the status quo. He knew they could accomplish the impossible. As the Starship continued its journey toward Mars, SpaceX began preparations for the first manned mission. Musk had hand-picked a team of astronauts and engineers for the mission, individuals who were not only experts in their fields but also had the mental toughness to survive the grueling conditions of deep space travel. The crew would be isolated for months in the confines of Starship, relying on the ship's life support systems to stay alive. They would face challenges no human had ever encountered, but Musk was confident that they were ready. Among the crew was Dr. Sarah Gonzalez, a seasoned astronaut and one of the leading experts in planetary science. She had trained for years in extreme conditions, but nothing could fully prepare her for what lay ahead. The journey to Mars was a leap into the unknown, a step into uncharted territory. "We're going to make history," she said during a pre-launch briefing. "This is what we've been preparing for our whole careers. The future is ours to shape." The crew members shared her enthusiasm, but they were also aware of the risks. Space travel was inherently dangerous, and the trip to Mars would test their limits. But the opportunity to be part of something so monumental outweighed the fear. "Just remember," Musk said as he addressed the crew before the mission, "this is not just about getting to Mars. It's about humanity's future. You're all pioneers. You're the ones who will take the first steps on Mars, and you'll inspire generations to come." As the crew prepared for the journey, they knew that their lives would be changed forever. They would be leaving Earth behind, possibly forever. The isolation would be overwhelming, the risks high. But they were determined. The first days of the mission were smooth, with Starship gliding through the vast emptiness of space. The crew kept themselves busy with maintenance tasks, experiments, and exercise routines. They knew that keeping their minds and bodies active would be crucial for their long-term well-being. But the real challenges came when they began their approach to Mars. The planet's atmosphere was thin, and the gravity was strong, which made the descent difficult. The crew had been trained for this moment, but nothing could prepare them for the complexity of landing on a foreign world. The tension was palpable as the crew made their final descent to Mars. The countdown to landing was underway. The Starship's engines fired, and the spacecraft began its descent toward the Martian surface. Every second felt like an eternity. And then, the moment arrived. Starship touched down on Mars with a soft thud, its landing legs absorbing the shock. The crew erupted in cheers, but the real work had just begun. They had made it. Humanity had taken its first steps on another planet. As the crew opened the hatch and stepped onto the Martian surface, the weight of the moment hit them. They were standing on a planet that had once seemed unreachable, and now, it was theirs to explore. The challenges were immense, but so were the possibilities. Musk watched from Earth, his heart swelling with pride. The mission had succeeded. SpaceX had delivered on its promise, and humanity's future in space was now secured. And he would be there, pushing forward, no matter what. It had been a year since the first successful landing on Mars, and SpaceX had solidified its position as the spearhead of humanity's ambitions to colonize other planets. The once distant dream of establishing a self-sustaining colony on Mars was no longer just a fantasy, it was happening. SpaceX had proven to the world that it was possible, that humans could travel to Mars, live there, and thrive. Elon Musk stood on the rooftop of SpaceX's headquarters in Hawthorne, California, looking out at the vast expanse of the stars above. The weight of his accomplishments, his legacy, was beginning to settle in. The road to this moment had been anything but easy, but each obstacle, each failure, had been part of the journey. And now, here he was, witnessing the dawn of a new era for humanity. SpaceX was no longer just a company, it had become the cornerstone of space exploration. The successful missions to Mars had opened up a new world of possibilities. Musk had always said that his goal was not just to make history but to change the course of humanity's future, to ensure that Earth was no longer the only home for humankind. And now, with the settlement on Mars underway, it was clear that his vision was becoming a reality. The Mars colony was growing. Over the past year, SpaceX had launched several successful missions to Mars, sending supplies, equipment, and more astronauts to the surface. The initial team of pioneers had established the first base on the planet, a small but functional outpost that would serve as the foundation for the much larger colony that was being planned. Each new mission to Mars had brought its own set of challenges, but the team had adapted. The isolation was still difficult, but the crew had grown stronger, more resourceful. The technologies developed by SpaceX for life support, energy generation, and food production were working as intended. The first Martian crops had been grown, and the colony was beginning to look more like a city than a science experiment. Dr. Sarah Gonzalez, the lead astronaut from the first manned mission, now served as the head of the Mars colony's operations. She had become the face of the Martian effort, a symbol of human perseverance and innovation. Her leadership had been instrumental in making the colony a success. She, along with her team, had transformed Mars from an inhospitable desert into a place where humans could live and work. The colony was still small, but it was growing every day. The first school for Martian-born children had opened, and scientists were working on projects to make the planet more habitable for future generations. There were plans to build domes, larger habitats, and eventually entire cities. Musk watched the progress from Earth, but he knew it was only a matter of time before he would visit Mars himself. He had always said that he would not be satisfied until he could personally walk on the Martian surface. Now, with the colony thriving, he was closer than ever to making that dream a reality. The success of SpaceX's Mars missions had not gone unnoticed. Governments around the world had begun to recognize the potential of space exploration, and collaboration between nations had become more common. The United States, Russia, China, and the European Union were all sending representatives to Mars to work alongside SpaceX and contribute to the growing colony. Musk had always believed in the power of collaboration over competition, especially when it came to space exploration. He knew that no one company or country could accomplish such an ambitious goal on its own. The challenges of living on Mars, harsh weather, radiation exposure, limited resources, required the collective expertise of humanity. The first international conference on Mars took place at the new SpaceX Mars facility, with representatives from all over the globe attending. It was a momentous event, symbolizing the unity of the human race in its quest to explore the stars. The goal was clear: to work together to build a sustainable, thriving civilization on Mars that would ensure humanity's survival and prosperity. Musk addressed the attendees with his usual vision and enthusiasm. "This is just the beginning," he said, his voice steady and resolute. "Mars is our new home. It's not just a place for exploration, it's a place for future generations to grow and thrive. Together, we can turn this barren world into a new Earth." The crowd erupted in applause, and for a moment, it felt as though the impossible had been achieved. The vision Musk had shared so many years ago was now a reality. As SpaceX's mission to Mars grew, so did the pressure on Musk. Being the figurehead of such an extraordinary achievement came with its own set of challenges. The expectations were high, and not everyone agreed with his approach. Critics were quick to point out the dangers of colonizing another planet, questioning the ethics of sending people to Mars with so many unknowns. Musk had always been a visionary, but that didn't mean he was immune to doubt. There were days when the weight of his responsibility felt overwhelming. The future of humanity was now tied to the success of the Mars missions, and he couldn't afford to fail. But in his quiet moments, Musk reminded himself why he had started this journey in the first place. He was not in this for fame or fortune. He was in this because he believed that humanity's future depended on expanding beyond Earth. The Earth was fragile, and he had seen firsthand how quickly disaster could strike. He didn't want to leave the future of humanity to chance. The challenges are immense, he said during a meeting with his team. But so are the rewards. We are laying the groundwork for the next great leap for mankind. We are taking the first steps to becoming a multiplanetary species. That's the legacy I want to leave behind. As the years passed, the Mars colony continued to grow. The first permanent habitats were constructed, and a network of solar-powered farms began to supply the colony with food. The technology to produce oxygen from the Martian atmosphere was refined, and SpaceX was able to send larger cargo ships to transport resources and materials needed for the expansion. The dream of turning Mars into a second home for humanity was slowly becoming a reality. The colony had its first permanent population, a mix of scientists, engineers, medical professionals, and, eventually, families. New businesses had sprouted up to support the growing community. Mars was becoming more than just a scientific outpost, it was becoming a new world. Musk made his first visit to Mars, stepping out onto the red soil with the same sense of awe that he had felt all those years ago when he first envisioned the possibility of interplanetary travel. The journey had not been easy, but it had been worth it. Mars was a symbol of human potential, a testament to what could be achieved when humanity set its sights on the stars. SpaceX began plans for missions to the Moon, and further exploration of the outer planets was being discussed. With the technology developed for Mars, humanity was now equipped to explore the stars in ways that had once seemed impossible. For Musk, the legacy of Mars was not just about the first step in space exploration. It was about igniting the spark that would propel humanity into a future where the stars were within reach. Mars was only the beginning, and with each new mission, the dream of becoming a multiplanetary species moved closer to reality. Musk stood on the surface of Mars, looking out over the barren landscape. In the distance, the sun was setting, casting a soft orange glow over the horizon. He had accomplished something that few people ever dared to dream about, and now, the future was wide open. Here we are, Musk whispered to himself. A new beginning. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?